Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelaz.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Bruville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce. Madame le député Dublay. Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezéc.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ozouf.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Faltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Madame le greffier.
Prions Dieu, notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom, nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est en compagnie de ta bénédiction, réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qui te plut de commettre le soin, car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car toi, le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Défaut.
Madame le député Dublay.
Présente.
Madame le député Moore.
So, Deputy Moore is actually on her way back and will be tomorrow. She had arranged for her flight originally before the change in the schedule to the Assembly sitting, so she asked to be excusée.
Agreed, therefore excusez. Excusez. Les États sont constitués. There are no announcements from the Chair. A number of subordinate enactments have been laid under B. Also, a number of matters have been presented All aid is described in the consolidated order paper under C. We come now to notification of lodged propositions. The following have been lodged. The draft residential tenancy Jersey Amendment Law P24 amendment lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. The same law amendment, second amendment lodged by Deputy Scott. The same law, third amendment lodged by Deputy Renouf. The same law, fourth amendment lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. The same law amendment, fourth amendment to the, an amendment to the fourth amendment lodged by the Minister for Housing. The same law, the fifth amendment lodged by the same minister. The same law, sixth amendment lodged by Deputy Scott. Same law, sixth amendment and amendment to it lodged by Deputy Scott. Draft election senators Jersey Amendment Law P56, an amendment lodged by the Connétables and Helier. The same law, second amendment lodged by the Comité des Connétables. The same law, third amendment lodged by Deputy Jeune. The same law, amendment to the third amendment lodged by Deputy Jeune. The same law, fourth amendment lodged by Deputy Clavier. Draft regulation of care Jersey Amendment Law P57 lodged by the Minister for the Environment. Extension of Section 75 Electronic Travel Authorisations of the Nationality and Borders Act 2022 to Jersey. V58 lodged by the Chief Minister. The same law and amendment lodged by Deputy Balash. Draft Income Support Parents, Children and Housing Jersey Amendment Regulations at P59 lodged by the Minister for Social Security. Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal appointment of members P60 lodged by the Minister for Social Security. Statutory pre-sale agreements for standard residential property transactions P61 lodged by Deputy Andrews. Draft Telecommunications Law Jersey Amendment Regulations P62 lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Draft Dogs Law Jersey Amendment Regulations P63 lodged by the Comité des Connétables. Suspension Deputy Ozouf of St Saviour P64 lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Draft Assisted Dying Jersey Law P65 lodged by the Council of Ministers. Jersey Police Complaints Authority reappointment of members P66 lodged by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Les Kennevet Parade and Precinct P67 lodged by Deputy Miles. And Commercial Properties and Leases Improved Administration P68 lodged by the same deputy. The following has been withdrawn. Amendments to Standing Orders Revised Code of Conduct P35, which had been lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. There is nothing under F, G, H and I written questions. Answers have been tendered to the 4 written questions in the consolidated order paper, and we come now to oral questions. And the first oral question is asked by Deputy Southern of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether, during the development of the draft assisted dying Jersey Law 2020 plus, further consideration was given to the difference between unbearable suffering for terminal patients and unbearable suffering for patients with incurable illness? And will he explain the extent to which incurable diseases were considered during the drafting of this law?
Minister.
Sir, I'm afraid the answer to both parts of the Deputy's question is negative. No further thought has been given to either of the matters stated. As the Deputy will know, the draft law is based on the P18-2024 proposals that were agreed by this Assembly in May of that year. In that debate, the Assembly agreed that assisted dying should be permitted for people whose physical medical condition is expected to cause death within 6 months, or 12 months where neurodegenerative conditions are involved. However, the Assembly rejected proposals to permit assisted dying for people experiencing unbearable suffering. So, sir, whatever Deputy Southern's view, or my view for that matter, might have been on the issue, I'm afraid we both have to accept that the draft law can only reflect the detail of the collective decisions that were made during the earlier debate. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's assessment, could it be that as stated in the assisted dying law, it's open to challenge whether the difference between the two groups of candidates is discriminatory and open to challenge under HR law.
So that's a question that I'm afraid I can't answer standing here. I'm certainly happy to take further advice on that, but it's certainly something I haven't got the knowledge to answer that question without making reference to somebody who knows about it more than I do, sir.
Deputy.
So during the course of drafting the current law that's being proposed, did the Minister take any advice on the future likelihood of any discrimination challenges for those members of the public who may wish to avail themselves of assisted dying but who don't currently meet the fairly tight description provided for in the proposals?
No, I haven't, sir. I didn't consider that to be particularly within my remit. My remit was for the team to go away and draft the laws in accordance with the decisions that were taken. I think I've got sympathy for the views of both deputies here, and I'm hopeful that at some point in the future, the proposition will be brought to the Assembly to have another vote on that area, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question? Final supplementary, Deputy Sutton? Very well, we come to question 2 that Deputy Kovac will ask of the Chair of the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise what consideration, whether through any work undertaken or discussion in PPC meetings, has been given to the possible introduction of a recall election process for states members whose conduct falls below expected standards or who breach the law, and what conclusion, if any, have been reached?
Thank you, sir. When the former PPC went out to consultation on the Code of Conduct last year, one of the questions posed was whether members thought a recall mechanism should be introduced. Only 7 members indicated some support for introducing a form of recall, with others expressing concerns about it becoming weaponised. The former PPC took the decision not to progress this matter at that time, but I expect that as part of our consideration around the Code of Conduct, which we hope to lodge in a revised form for debate soon, we will discuss broader changes to standing orders and the States of Jersey law, which we may wish to pursue. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Lyndon.
Yes, please. Has PPC examined how recall processes operate in other jurisdictions and what relevance or lessons such comparison may hold for Jersey? And has the public been consulted at all in this?
Yes, we have had comparisons with other jurisdictions, but I do not believe that we've directly consulted with the public. That would be a possibility, I suppose, in the future, but at the moment we are discussing it within the confines of PPC, and we've had debates about it on 2 occasions last year, and on both of those occasions at the time it was not supported, but obviously times change. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mezéc.
Thank you, sir. In the absence of a recall mechanism, there are ways that a states member can be automatically expelled as a member that don't require a mechanism, either a recall or anything else, to initiate that because it's automatic when they become disqualified. Has PPC looked at that system and determined whether it is adequate or not, or whether there's anything that ought to be changed in it, bearing in mind that there are obviously, of course, democratic ramifications of members losing their seats automatically without any process that actually formally initiates that?
Thanks, sir. Yes, obviously the Royal Court is permitted to remove a constable from the Assembly, and that has obviously occurred quite recently, but that is not the case with deputies. What's the other ways of... We haven't actually discussed it yet, but I would imagine that it will be raised on our agenda moving forward, because there are changes that I believe we wish to make but will have to be discussed and, of course, will have to be brought to the Assembly as well for confirmation. Thank you.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. One of the ways that members can be automatically expelled from this chamber is if they are declared bankrupt by the court. Has the committee given any consideration as to whether those kind of things are appropriate in the modern day in a democratic society, bearing in mind not all parliaments have that as a mechanism to automatically expel members, and would he and his committee undertake to look at that to see if the framework for continued membership in the Assembly when the members are going through things like that is appropriate for the modern age?
Absolutely, sir. Bankruptcy has not been raised as yet, but certainly we will add that to the list of agenda items that we need to discuss. And of course, the other way, I'm sure that the questioner is aware of, for removing a states member if the states member withdraws themselves from the Assembly for 6 months. And again, that has happened on a previous occasion. Thank you.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. The chair said that 9 members supported a recall mechanism, and I just wondered if you could give the exact number of members who objected to one, and to explain how the PPC are overcoming the possibility of the code of conduct itself being weaponised.
In response to the first part, we went out to consultation, obviously to members, and there were 14 responses at that stage. The question regarding the recall system was the last question on the consultation, so that can have an effect on the amount of people who get down to the last question. But of the 14 responses received, there were 7 responses in favour, some were firm yeses, some were depending on the gravity of offence, some were most extreme cases of poor behaviour, etc. And there were 2 definitive noes. So I think that covers that. And on the weaponisation, that has not been discussed as yet.
Supplemental question, Deputy Orr.
Yes, I wonder how the PPC can therefore justify, on the basis of what was a majority supporting recall mechanisms, having decided not to pursue that as a measure at this stage. And the chair still hasn't responded to my question about how is he ensuring that the code of conduct isn't weaponised, bearing in mind that surely it needs to be...
The answer to that was that it hasn't been considered by PPC at this stage.
I see. Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
He did answer that part of the question.
Okay. Well,
so you just
stick with the first bit then. First bit, sir, was that given that a majority of the members supported a recall mechanism and the minority only over a minority, why did the PPC not continue to explore this subject at that stage rather than indicate to members that they would not be doing so?
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that. Yes, so it was obviously discussed at the previous PPC. I was a part of that last conversation, but obviously we have a newly formed PPC now. And I found the relevant comment on the minutes, which said the committee did not support the introduction of a recall mechanism in the Jersey context and recognised the potential for misuse. So that was the reason that was given at that time. Thank you.
Well, Deputy Morrell, and then final supplementary. No other questions. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Continuing on from the theme of misuse of a recall mechanism, would the chair agree or disagree with the idea that a recall mechanism may not be a particularly edifying inclusion to political life in Jersey in terms of the way that it could be used both not just within the Assembly, but obviously within political discourse tonight?
Yes, I agree with the Deputy's question entirely. But we have to accept that even if we bring amendments through the Code of Conduct or otherwise, it will be up to the Assembly to determine whether a recall mechanism is wanted or actually needed. I'm sure that it may well be popular within the constituencies, but maybe not quite so popular amongst members.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Final supplementary question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. What other alternative permanent mechanism, if any, are currently under consideration by PPC to ensure better accountability of states members whose conduct falls below expected standards or breaches the law, where the public that elects us can have their say?
We are, sir, at PPC looking to change some of the standing orders in regard to the severity of punishments and sanctions and such like that can be brought. We hope to be able to bring those before the next election, certainly, and obviously it'll be for the due consideration of this Assembly as to whether they support them or not. Thank you.
Very well. We come to question 3. The Deputy Andrews will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the Minister for the Environment's decision not to attend the complaints panel hearing held on 31st of July 2025, will the Chief Minister state whether he had any discussions or correspondence with the Minister regarding the Minister's decision, and if so, whether he signalled his agreement with that decision?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I can confirm that the Minister for Environment and I did not have any discussions regarding his decision, sir, not to attend the panel hearing on the 31st of July.
Supplemental question.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to know whether the Chief Minister is in agreement with the Minister for Environment's decision not to attend the complaints panel hearing on the 31st of July.
Thank you, sir. I believe in such circumstances it is for the Minister to decide as to how such matters are approached. So I'm sure all ministers, well, I know all ministers appreciate the importance of effective complaint mechanisms and consistently work with the complaints panel. So, as members know, the Deputy will be giving a statement to the Assembly later today, so outlining his reasons for not being in attendance. I accept in this decision, sir, the Minister was acting in good faith and to the best of his knowledge in line with their obligations, including the obligations to their staff. Thank you.
I have Deputies Wilson, Gardner, Renouf, and then final supplementary. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister agree that listening to members of the public and their concerns is a key element of our role, and that given that ministers' refusal to meet with the complaints panel, has he considered if the role of an ombudsman could have been helpful in this case, and if so, can he state if it is his intention to establish this kind of oversight to retain confidence in the complaints process?
I think it's absolutely essential that ministers and states members engage fully with the complaints process, and it's up to members and ministers how they do that, depending on the context and the details of the case. And I believe in this circumstance, the Deputy did that, and he'll be making an explanation of his rationale later. A piece of work is well underway, nearing completion, being carried out by Deputy Moss-Scott, in line with my previous comments to Assembly as to whether we proceed with the decision to establish an ombudsperson. I'm beginning to think that that could be a better course of action, because I think in this modern society now we need to, I think, nail down the complaints process a little bit and look for something so that can take us forward. But as I said, sir, a decision will be made in due course.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, and I welcome the Chief Minister stating that it's important to engage with a complaints process. So will the Chief Minister commit to issue guidance to ministers to their responsibility they must engage with complaints process and complaints panel?
I think ministers are fully clear on that, and Deputy Lewis has engaged with the complaints process on a number of occasions. And his decision not to attend a single meeting doesn't constitute a position where he's not going to engage. I think in his statement he says he's prepared to fully engage with the process. I'm happy to remind ministers of their obligations, so although I know ministers are already aware of that, but I will reinforce the point.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Would the Chief Minister consider not attending the complaints panel as public expecting? It's an option. It looks like break of trust that public has in complaints process, and My question, how will the Chief Minister restore public trust if ministers decline to attend complaints panel meeting?
I think that's exactly why we need to review the whole process. And I think, sir, that we're likely to be leading towards an ombudsperson to tighten things up and have a broader and more consistent approach to dealing with public complaints.
Much. Deputy Renouf.
My question has already been answered, sir.
Thank you very much. Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews.
Does the Chief Minister agree with me that there is an expectation for ministers, if they are to be called upon to attend the complaints panel, that they should be giving their side of events in order to have a fair hearing, but by not attending, it does raise questions about political accountability of the Council of Ministers? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I completely agree and believe it's a duty of all of us to engage with the public on such matters, and I believe Deputy Luce has engaged with the public, has engaged with the complaints panel. His decision not to attend a single hearing does not signal his intention not to engage with the case that's ongoing, sir, and I'll leave it for the Deputy to make an explanation in his statement. Thank you.
Very much. Come to question 4 that Deputy Ward will ask the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to recent media coverage regarding Durrell, will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, has been given to the economic and social impact to the island of Jersey Zoo closing its doors or Durrell moving from Jersey?
Minister.
Sir, I'm sure all members would agree with me that it would be an enormous shame and disappointment to many islanders if Durrell Jersey Zoo was to close. And I must say that other than media, I have no specific information to suggest that it is in that situation. I can say to the Assembly that no specific consideration has been given by my department to the economic and social impacts. And my department does not hold any data on the number of visitors who come to Jersey specifically to visit the zoo, which would obviously be important in order to undertake such an investigation. I might add as well, sir, that whilst I completely understand the genuine and positive nature that the Deputy is asking the question, I do get slightly concerned when something is brought to the political level publicly, because I would not want to encourage a process by which such an institution was to close, just because it's kind of being brought into that political discourse. And so I am very guarded because of that, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ward.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister tell the Assembly what metrics are used by his department to measure the economic and social benefits that a visitor attraction brings to the wider economy?
Sir, it is not and would not be appropriate in the main for any department of government to measure the impacts of a specific organisation or business. We tend to look at sectors as a whole, and so we would look at how attractions perhaps within the visitor sector add to the economy. I must say I don't believe we have done that piece of work, but that's how we would look at it. I don't think we would ever look at a single business to see how what impact that has. So.
Supplemental, I beg your pardon, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister confirm whether or not he's met with the Board of Durrell to establish what is actually happening in the organisation?
No, sir, I have not. And again, I do not believe it is the place of any minister or politician to necessarily involve itself in the affairs of what is ultimately a private organisation, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Durrell have been in receipt of a large amount of public money. What kind of support would the Minister consider now for Durrell, given its international local standing in the world of conservation?
Sir, that's not a question that I have given consideration to at all before this moment, and so I could not answer it in any meaningful way. Thank you, sir.
I have Deputy Tadier, then final supplementary question. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister welcome Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust's decision to put an end to deer hunting on their Scotland estate that they announced over the summer, and does he think that will help boost their longevity and reputation for visitors in Jersey?
So I see what the deputy's doing there. No, I mean, just in making deer hunting relevant to this question, sir. I genuinely don't know much about the situation with regard to hunting on the estate in Scotland, but I would welcome anything Durrell does that would enhance its longevity and sustainability. So,
Does he think it at least helps resolve some cognitive dissonance that members of the public might have with a wildlife preservation trust previously encouraging the killing of animals on its land?
So I can absolutely appreciate the cognitive dissonance that people may feel around that, sir. And very superficially, having not thought deeply about it, I probably share that, sir. But I also do understand how, particularly, for instance, in wildlife parks across the world, particularly I know in Africa, they often do use hunting as a way to maintain wildlife levels. So it isn't a simple black and white answer, and the management of wildlife is something that is far beyond my abilities, but it is a very complex issue, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. A major factor for the losses incurred by the zoo is the withdrawal of donor funding. What support could the Minister offer the zoo to ensure it has a sustainable future should the decline in donor revenue be so significant that the zoo is no longer financially sustainable?
So I could not comment on what support may or may not be available, sir. But what I would say, and this is partly in reference as well to Deputy Wilson's earlier question, is that my door is open. I will not impose myself on the zoo, but they may well, and I'm happy for them to impose themselves on me. And so if they do wish to speak to me, I'd be more than happy to do so, sir.
Well, we come to question 5. The Deputy Wilson will ask the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister commit to publishing a comparison of freight costs before and after the introduction of the new flat rate card, so that the public may judge whether the contract with DFDS is working as intended, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Sir, such a comparison, number one, wouldn't shed any light on whether the contract is working as intended, sir. But I must also add that direct comparisons cannot be made from today and previously due to the opaque nature of freight pricing arrangements during the incumbent's previous tenure. The new flat rate card is entirely designed to create the transparency that was not there in the past, sir. And that promotion of transparency is expected to promote competition and, at the very least, an understanding long into the future of where freight prices will be, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Yes, earlier this year, the Chief Economist advised that the contract with DFDS would result in maximum increase of 0.4% in food prices. This projection was used to reassure the public and states members that the new freight pricing structure would significantly increase the cost of living. If the Minister cannot produce any comparative data, then will he explain what assumptions, exclusions and uncertainties were behind the 0.4% figure, and what corrective action government will take if costs continue to increase above the 0.4% figure?
Sir, the person to ask about the 0.4% figure in the main is the Chief Economic Advisor, sir. But I have no reason to doubt the Chief Economic Advisor's assumptions and calculations. But it must also be said, sir, that 0.4% on a basket of shopping goods is not 4.4% on RPI. It is much less than that. It is also very important to understand that following the JCRA's own investigations into the freight sector, that they determined that distribution of goods to the island and into the island came to just 7% of the cost of goods on the shelves. And so we are talking about a very, very small amount of the overall cost of goods in Jersey, sir. And that 7% for distribution costs includes on-island distribution costs. And so that 7% is not made up solely of ferry and freight costs. It is made up of people distributing on-island themselves. So, sir, Deputy Wilson, particularly as a member of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel, I'm sure would easily, happily engage with the Chief Economic Advisor to understand that more, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. A few days ago, one of his own assistant ministers published publicly on a public website, unsurprisingly, on a Facebook group, the following question that I expect to be asked is how the Chief Economic Advisor estimated a 0.4% increase on food prices without government having sought key information from ferry speed. Is the Minister able to answer his Assistant Minister's question about why he didn't, whether it's correct that government didn't seek key information from ferry speed on that?
Sir, I will not comment on what government did or didn't engage with in the private company, sir. But my understanding is that all calculations were done with regard to the previous incumbent's rate card. But what we are unsure of is whether that was actually what was being charged or not, sir. So, as I understand it, calculations were done on the previous rate card, sir.
So can the Minister advise whether or not an up-to-date projection has been done about taking into consideration the latest additional freight charges that we know DFDS have been imposing retrospectively for import and export of freight and the likely impact that is going to have on freight costs and possibly cost of living in Jersey?
I thank the Deputy, sir, for that question. I think, again, it's very important to understand, sir, that the previous incumbent was not running a sustainable ferry service, sir. The previous incumbent had previously come to government asking for £40 million to maintain its viability, sir. It was not capable of investing in new vessels, and that is a situation that has entirely changed. The contract that we have signed, and indeed, regardless of, let me change that, sir, the tender process that we entered into was all about finding a sustainable ferry service that could stand on its own feet and could be invested in long into the future. The one fact that we knew was that the previous incumbent was unable, with the previous situation, to engage in a sustainable ferry service and deliver that sustainable ferry service to this island. When it came to government asking for money, we understood that. When it went to our other island, with an emergency that none of us know about still to this day, sir, we understood that it did not have a sustainable ferry service. And it's really important to note that the charges that the Deputy refers to are not DFDS charges, sir. They are Ports of Jersey charges. And so it would seem to me that if they were not being passed on in the past, that was one of the many reasons why that was not a sustainable ferry service. It was not able, the previous incumbent was not able to maintain that sustainability because it was swallowing costs that it was not able to swallow. Thank you, sir.
I have Deputy Ozouf, then final supplementary. Deputy Ozouf.
Would the Minister explain how he consulted and got advice as to the economic implications of the important and potentially momentous decision of a flat rate card, including whether or not he consulted the JCRA?
Sir, we did engage with the JCRA, and naturally the Chief Economic Advisor was the main source of information in that respect, sir.
So I attended with two other deputies the JCRA briefing. There was only two members and myself there, and I specifically asked them about whether they were consulted on the rate card, flat rate card, and they said no, they were not, and much to my concern, they were not interested in it. It was a matter for government. I wonder whether he could explain that disparity of statements.
Sir, it was important to engage with the JCRA to understand whether a flat rate card would be viable in terms of its impact on competition and its impact from a regulatory perspective, sir. So there had to be, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, an engagement of some sort. But, sir, as the Deputy has, he believes, found a disparity, I am, of course, very willing to go and find out exactly what was or wasn't said there, sir. But it was my understanding that we had to at least find out whether the JCRA would have objections to such a thing, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. It seems increases in freight costs are now starting to affect every corner of our economy. Will the Minister commit to commissioning an independent review of the first 12 months of this contract? And if not, will he please then tell us how he is actually going to restore confidence in the arrangements that he's put in place for new ferry and freight services?
Sir, such hyperbole, I feel, does not do anyone in this island a service, sir. It is the case that we now have a situation where we know the freight rates going forward, how much the ferry company will charge freight providers such as Ferry Speed, such as Jersey Post and others, how much they will charge for their services. That is a situation that we never had before, sir. We did not know when the previous incumbent suddenly put an 18 or 19% increase on the cost of freight. No one had any idea that that was about to take place, sir, yet it happened. And previous to that, there were many, many other times when freight prices were increased without anyone knowing that it was about to take place. That situation is not going to happen in the future, sir. And I am disappointed that there has been communication errors by DFDS which have made it, have created this distaste. And I knew that there would always be some problems when we switch from one provider to another. But I now know that we are working with a provider who will sit in the room and tell me what is actually going on, rather than stringing me along with stories, sir, that I didn't know that were coming from who knows where. And so, sir, I think it's really, really important that we understand that having the transparency going forward is vital to the freight situation in Jersey. And I do not agree with the Deputy's perspective that an item which makes up at the maximum 7% of the cost of goods on our shelves
Minister, I
is
do
now
have to
having
ask
an
you to bring
impact
your
on all
answer
corners of the economy, sir.
to a halt, please. Thank you very much. We now come to question 6, that Deputy Reniff will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the statement he circulated on 7th August 2025 and his comments in the media reported on 26th August 2025, will the Minister provide further details about the review of elective surgery that is currently underway and how it interacts with his ambitions to increase spending for health?
Minister.
Sir, as the Deputy will recall, in my statement of the 7th of August, I referred to a review of procedures and treatments. The statement was reasonably basic in order to present a straightforward and easily understandable message for all concerned. However, having been asked for further details, I'm happy to explain that the review forms an essential part of work being undertaken to develop an all-new treatments and interventions prioritisation policy. At present, we're reliant upon a narrow and outdated policy, which does little more than set criteria for access to publicly funded surgeries only. The new policy will cover access to surgery, wider treatments and medicines. So all that's happening at this stage, sir, is that the professional team at HCJ are getting on with the work described. What is important to make clear is that nothing has been predetermined. Insofar as this review interacts with my ambitions to increase funding for health, I would say that it occurs mainly in one specific area: value for money. I believe this was made very clear in my statement of the 7th of August, sir.
Mr. Supplementary question?
Yes, sir. In July 2024, the Orthopaedic and Theatre Review was delivered, and it said that elective surgery could be delivered more efficiently by, for example, identifying procedures that could be performed in outpatients' rooms rather than in inpatient theatre facilities. Have the recommendations of that review been taken up?
Sir, I have no idea. Health have got 3,000 odd employees. That sort of detail I certainly wouldn't carry with me. I'm very happy to make the inquiry and let the Deputy know as soon as I found out, sir.
Much, Mr. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. When the Minister is assessing whether this policy change delivers value for money and any savings, will he be sure to look at whether there is a reduction in spend across all departments and whether any delays in elective procedures won't result in actual higher costs in other departments or over time?
So that's quite a complicated question insofar as it relates to waiting times. They're a specific problem in their own right. All of the recommendations will be made to me by clinical experts. The whole thing will be referred to the Health Advisory Board, and the decisions will be made as a result of that process.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Sir, just to simplify my question, will the Minister be looking across other departments with other ministers and not just looking at the savings to his own department? And also he mentioned the TIPS policy. Will he ensure that this new policy takes into account factors around health inequalities?
I'm not aware that this is particularly focused on health inequalities. This is basically a review of the way that services are delivered in all areas. It's an across-the-piece evaluation, sir.
Deputy Jeune, then Deputy Gardner, and then a final supplementary, no other. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's comments on the August the 26th, the Minister said we're trying to be as open as we can about everything we're looking at. Will the Minister therefore publish the terms of reference for this specific review?
So I'm happy to publish any information that we've got that relates to this review, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, and will the Minister confirm whether this report, this review will be finalised before Christmas or part of wider discussion that the Assembly can see within the discussions around health financing and a health strategy?
So I think if everything goes according to plan, the idea is for the report to be submitted to the advisory board at its next meeting, sir. So everything will be revealed at that stage.
Very well. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister explain why the value for money recommendations from the orthopedic review that was a year ago were not taken forward, and how this review ensured that the recommendations from another review will actually deliver value for money and the service required?
Sorry, sir. Could the Deputy repeat the name of the review that she initially referred to, sir?
Can you do that?
Answering to the Deputy Wren of supplementary questions, Minister wasn't able to answer what happened with the recommendations of the orthopedic department review in 2024 that was published.
Could you state the name of the review again? Because I'm afraid I didn't hear that either, Deputy.
So, if I may, it's the Orthopaedic and Theatre Review.
Orthopaedic and Theatre Review. We appear to be having entertainment with the lights. Let's assume that they won't actually damage the speaker system. I beg your pardon, Deputy, I'm sorry, I was distracted by work.
No problem, sir. The orthopaedic review, I can only assume that that's been carried out in a way that one would expect it to be, sir. And I think that the people that do these things take into account and into context all of the reviews that have been done in the past. As I say, I don't carry intimate points of detail of such things around with me, but I'm certainly happy to make the inquiry and inform the Deputy of the extent to which that's been taken up, sir.
Thank you very much. Supplemental question, Deputy.
Sure. Waiting list for the elective surgery has been rising every month for over a year. What does the Minister anticipate? When does the Minister anticipate that the waiting list will start to come down?
I think the Deputy referred specifically to orthopaedic waiting lists. We're having a lot of problems with an awful lot of waiting lists, sir.
I think the Deputy was about to interject and say she wasn't limiting it to orthopaedic
to
waiting
elective surgeries.
Elective surgery. Elective surgery.
Yeah, it's a complicated one, no simple answers, sir. People will see when the budget comes through that I'm looking for a considerable increase in funding for lots of different areas in health, which we'll go through when the time comes. And it's going to take some considerable time to put these issues right. So it's not something that we can solve in the next 3 months, and I'd be lying if I said that we had a clear plan to do that.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Wren.
Yes, sir. What reassurance can the Minister give that following the review of elective surgery that's underway, we will not end up with a two-tier service where some procedures will only be available to those who can afford to pay?
So what the review intends to do is to provide guidance on how we should prioritise in terms of importance. As I think everybody knows, healthcare becomes more and more complicated every year, and more procedures and treatments are introduced. And every now and again you have to have a review. I think it's some considerable time since that's been done, and we're relying on a lot of information that was put together many years ago. So I think it's high time that we did this review, and I'm sure that when it comes out that everybody in the Assembly will find that it's a considerable improvement on what we're working with at the moment, sir.
Very much. Minister, very well. Come to question 7. The Deputy Alex Curtis will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the rejection by the Assembly of P9 2025, will the Minister, as shareholder representative, outline what progress, if any, has been made by the States of Jersey Development Company on the purchase and development of the Aviemore site, including any notable activities undertaken since February, and if no progress has been made, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, following the decision of the States Assembly to reject P9 2025, the Minister for the Environment has been requested to prepare supplementary planning guidance to help guide the development of the Aviemore site. SOGDC have not therefore progressed work on the site, as it would be imprudent to begin advancing plans and incurring costs without the benefit of the planning guidance, which is still awaited. This guidance will identify the key planning issues that are specific to this site and will seek to provide guidance in order that those issues might be appropriately addressed when the site is brought forward for development. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. Would the Minister identify where the request for supplementary planning guidance comes from in this case, given a site of that size and nature, it would be highly unusual to see site-level supplementary planning guidance for sites like this?
Sir, I believe that pursuant to P73/2010, which is a proposition that formed SOGDC, such guidance is required before SOGDC can proceed with any development. Given the increased planning risk highlighted during the debate on the Deputy's proposition, the need for clear planning guidance is critical before any work can begin. My understanding is that SOGDC can't begin the work without the planning guidance. Thank you, sir.
Well, we come now to question 8. The Deputy Scott will ask of the Chair of PPC. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair state the anticipated enactment date of the draft elections Senators Jersey Amendment Law 2002-P56/2025 and provide his estimates of any potential delays to that enactment should the Assembly approve any amendments to the law?
Chair.
Thank you, sir. Subject to the approval of the legislation at this sitting, PPC expects the draft law to be sent to Privy Council with a view to the matter being considered before Christmas, and the various articles will come into force on the dates listed under Article 65 of the law. It is worth noting that PPC has no influence over the schedule for Privy Council's timing or agenda. Although PPC has expressed some concern about the impact of Deputy Tadier's fourth amendments on the cost and administration of future elections, it does not consider that this should have any impact on the enactment or commencement of the law if adopted. PPC was mindful that the decision of this Assembly to reinstate senators was made close to the start of the election year, and it therefore built contingency into the timetable when it settled on the earliest commencement date as February 2026. There is a reasonable gap between the 1st of February and the proposed start of the nomination process in relation to Deputy Tadier's amendment. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Scott.
Yes, thank you, sir. In his speech on accepting his chairmanship, the chair indicated a concern that amendments could delay the amendment law. So I just wondered if he could explain how he formed this view.
Sorry, yes, as I've just explained, that the only delays that we can see that could possibly have affected it was Deputy Tadier's Fourth Amendment. There are no other concerns that we can voice. Thank you, sir.
Much indeed. Very well, we come to question 9. The Deputy Ozouf will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the oral question 118 of 2025, will the Infrastructure Minister provide an update on what engagement, if any, has taken place with the incumbent operator as well as alternative operators regarding the future of the island's fuel supply?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So I can confirm that officers are currently in the process of agreeing a new heads of terms with the current operator, which will ensure stability and resilience in the island's fuel supply. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ozouf.
Thank you, sir. I, over the summer period, had 3 meetings scheduled with the Infrastructure Minister and Chief Minister, but they were two of them were cancelled and with a promise of another. This has been the subject of a number of oral questions, and I wonder whether the Minister is prepared at any point to engage with a member who has, and the panel, who has advanced concerns about a continuation of an existing lease, and in answering, maybe he would explain the tenure and length of that proposed new lease, which will be subject to a standing order challenge, no doubt.
Minister.
So the Deputy is absolutely right that any lease would be subject to a 168, sir, where any member can challenge. The lease is for a shorter period than the original lease, sir, and will include break clauses. In terms of meetings, sir, I'm not sure which meetings were cancelled and by who, but I'm back on the island, sir, and available. Thank you.
Cool. We come now to question 10. The Deputy Gardener will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain what consideration, if any, has been given to enabling nurse-independent prescribers to issue medical certificates? And from any such consideration, will he state what steps would be required to allow this and explain what barriers, if any, there are to achieve it?
Minister.
I'm sorry, I've been taken completely unawares. Oh, sorry. That's a relief, sir.
Sorry, did I read the wrong minister out? Yes, I'm sorry. I think it could be that the original one was coached differently, but it doesn't matter. Sorry about that, Minister.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Deputy for raising this. It's an interesting question and is also well timed. The Deputy may recall that in July I signed a ministerial order expanding the range of independent prescribers to include not just nurses, but also pharmacists and paramedics who hold the relevant qualifications. This was an important step in modernising our primary care workforce and making the best use of all of our health professionals who work in Jersey. At this stage, my team has not yet started to consider the expansion of medical certification to a wider group of health professionals. However, this type of expansion is well aligned with the ongoing expansion of primary care health roles and will be considered at an appropriate time. Work would be needed to create the process for authorising a range of healthcare professionals to issue certificates, including identifying appropriate qualifications, governance and clinical oversight, record keeping, etc. I will continue to work with the Health Minister, GPs and other healthcare professionals to support the effective delivery of modern primary care services.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Given that the United Kingdom extended Fit to Note certification 2022 to include advanced nurses, and as ministers agreed, it will reduce pressure on GPs and improving continued care and reduce waiting time for patients. Would the minister indicate what are the timelines she would be working with the health minister to ensure that a small change can actually bring better service and proper monetary savings to
Thank you, sir. I'm not able to commit to a date at present because, as I said, no work has been planned. However, there is ongoing work around the expansion of primary care services. And I'm quite willing to follow up with the Deputy as that work progresses. I'm as keen as she is to ensure that our primary care services are efficient and effective as possible and providing the very best care to our islanders.
Before we come to question 11, the Deputy Doublé will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister please advise why the hate crime legislation has not been prioritised by the government and explain how she intends to mitigate the impact on vulnerable groups of the consequent delay to the legislation?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. It is unfortunate that the police complaints law is now in its 30th draft, and that has pushed back all legislation in relation to this term of office. The hate crime law was due to follow that particular piece of legislation as the officer has already been allocated it. We are now hoping that this legislation will be lodged in the coming weeks. I've recently met with 2 members of the community in order to explain where we are in relation to the hate crime law. In terms of mitigation, there is clearly no way to address hate crime as effectively as a hate crime law. However, this government has taken considerable steps towards equity in the areas of wages and childcare, as well as the development of the International Cultural Centre into a dedicated resource to support vulnerable groups. I would also remind members that while the law, there is not a proper law, there are laws that actually will address hate crime is both important and required. Most harms which will be addressed in this law can and should be addressed in other pieces of legislation. And therefore, sir, I would encourage any member of our community who actually is a victim of this type of offence to actually go to the police and report it, because there is legislation that can be used, even though we do not at this stage have a specific hate crime law.
Supplemental question.
So could I ask the Minister just to repeat part of the answer, because I wasn't clear. She mentioned that the law would be lodged before the end of the term. Did she mean the police complaints law that has delayed this one, or does she mean this law? Because that will...
Yes, sir, my apologies. It's the police complaints law which will be lodged in the coming weeks. In relation to the hate crime law, I had previously said that I was hoping that it would be before the end of 2025. Unfortunately, due to the complexity of the police complaints law, that is not going to be possible. However, once the police complaints law is lodged in the coming weeks, that individual will straight away start working on the hate crime law, although that officer has already got some knowledge and understanding.
Yes, I'll allow a supplementary now that you've had the answer that you asked.
Thank you, sir. That does help. So could the Minister clarify, is there a chance then that the hate crime legislation could be lodged before the end of this term?
Sir, it is unlikely that it will be lodged before the end of this term. Basically, we hope that they will make significant progress before the end of this term of office, and that a new government will be able to seek the drafting time. Because even though, sir, we will obviously have will have done significant work on it, the drafting time will be a challenge. Also, the fact that we will be going into purdah in April will make it even more of a challenge. So it is unlikely that it will be lodged before the end of this term of office because of the challenges in relation to drafting time.
Well, I have Deputy Jeune, Deputy Gardiner, then final supplementary. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, I was contacted by a constituent this summer who had experienced some racial abuse while they were on the beach with their family, and they expressed disappointment that when they went to the police that they had found out the hate crime law wasn't in place, and they felt that that could have maybe strengthened their dealings with the police. But of course, the main point is that we don't want to see this kind of situation in Jersey.
This does have to be a question. This is a speech at the moment, Deputy. Could it be a question, please?
Yeah. So, what could the Minister give examples of how herself and her officers are trying to prevent this type of racial abuse from happening in the first place?
Before you answer that, I'm going to say, can I just say, Deputy, that yep is not the parliamentary term for yes, sir. Right. Please answer the question, yes.
Thank you, sir. What I would say in relation to officers and myself, I am quite clear that I feel that we need a hate crime law. We just have not been in a position for this law to be progressed further than it has been. In relation to individuals who receive abuse, or if they receive abuse or if they're assaulted, if there's anything in relation to telecoms legislation, then I would suggest that they report it to the police. In relation to protection, it is always valuable for people, if they've got witnesses to those offences, that those witnesses go with them also. But these types of offences need to be reported to the police, and they need to be reported in fast time in order that those matters can be dealt with.
Supplemental question, Deputy Chair.
Yes, thank you, sir. Could the Minister maybe explain a little about what the government is doing to try to reduce and to try to reduce hate crime in general in Jersey, not from the point of view of trying to just prevent it? We've seen in the UK an increase, and we wouldn't want to see it here. So what is she specifically doing to prevent from the wider community to see that we don't have this type of behaviour?
So I think quite often there is many campaigns in relation to many things. And I think if you looked at some of the campaigns that have been running over recent weeks and talking about people's behaviour in whatever circumstances, I think a lot of the media in relation to that can actually fall in line with a number of different offences. So when we talk about behaviour in relation to violence against women and girls, we're also talking about behaviour in relation to other individuals as well. So I think we need to be aligned to the fact that there isn't always specifics about what offences we're talking about.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you. I'm sure that Minister remember Hate Doesn't Belong to Here, a campaign that was run in 2019 when 6 years passed, and since then we're waiting for the hate crime. Does the Minister accept that the delay undermines confidence in protecting minority groups in Jersey?
I do remember the campaign, sir, and I think that it is important that we remember that. And of course, we have, in the last 18 months, reintroduced Building a Safer Community framework. And so I think, sir, from the perspective of that and managing that and communities working together, I think that will highlight those facts. I do genuinely believe that if members of the community feel unsafe or they feel that they are at risk, that it is important for them to go into somewhere like the International Cultural Centre or to go into the States of Jersey Police or speak to people within their own community so that they can get help and assistance to be able to deal with matters. And I think it is about all of us as a community. It isn't only about legislation, sir. It is about us as a community working together in order to be able to stop these things from happening.
Supplemental.
I 100% agree with the Minister, sir, that we need to work as a community together. Saying this, unfortunately, our telecommunications law for online racial abuse threshold is really high, and we and other states members tried to test this law, which was unsuccessful. Going into the elections, would the Minister consider to ensure that the members and candidates will feel protected to look again, and if anything can be done to introduce hate crime law before coming elections?
Sir, I cannot promise that the hate crime law will be in before the elections, simply because there is insufficient drafting time before we come into purdah. However, there will be the consultation that will come whilst this legislation is being worked on. So that will be going out into the community. And there is some work that's obviously already been done on this, but it is about the offences and the drafting of those. So there has been some work, and this will be going out to consultation, one would hope, prior to the elections. So therefore the public will know that this law is coming down the train.
Final supplementary, Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for her answers, and she's clearly keen to progress this law, and I want to echo Deputy Gardner's question. Could the Minister give an update on a response that she gave to a previous question I asked in this area, encouraging the Minister to speak with the police around recording crimes motivated by hatred even before we have the legislation? Could she let us know what the progress of those discussions are, and is she ensuring that the police have the resources to do this and given any assistance that they might need?
Sir, I think what the Deputy asks is a point, and I'm aware of the question that she asked me previously. From my recollection, I apologise to the Deputy, I cannot actually recall whether I've had this conversation or not. However, what I will say is that where other places have actually recorded what we would say is a non-crime, it has actually caused some difficulties in relation to resourcing. But I will go back to the States of Jersey Police and ask in relation to this matter, because as I said, so I cannot recall whether I had an answer or not.
Come to question 12. The Deputy Stevenson will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the response to written question 308/2025, which showed that by the beginning of July, only 10% of the budget allocated for IVF treatment this year had been spent, will the Minister set out what plans he has to review the criteria to allow more people to access treatment, particularly those currently not eligible for funded treatment for non-clinical reasons? And if he has no such plans, why not?
Minister.
Sir, could I ask if the Deputy would be minded to allow Deputy Howell, Assistant Minister for Health, with responsibility for Women's Health? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. We are currently underspent on budget. This was anticipated given that we knew it would take some time for eligible couples to start the IVF process. This includes couples who are waiting for treatment at the Lister Clinic, with which Healthcare Jersey has only recently signed a contract. We have taken a cautious approach, as it is not possible to accurately predict demand, and we have to remain within the budget this year and in future years. That said, we recognise that the existing IVF criteria may be too restrictive, and as the Deputy is aware, we have committed to review them once we have more financial data on which to base our decisions, which we are currently doing. We will discuss any recommendations with stakeholders, and I will update the Deputy and the Assembly on any changes that may be brought forward, but this will not be until after the end of October. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the Assistant Minister's response to the question. If possible, could you explain why it's taking so long for that process to happen, recognising that for some fertility patients, every month really does matter for them?
I really acknowledge that every month does matter, Deputy, but the officers are working on it, and we absolutely have to know the financial situation before we open up the criteria, and if indeed we are able to do that. And we have to have 9 months financial data to be able to work on. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
So thank you. Will the Minister commit that if there is an underspend, it won't be clawed back and used to fund other services, but will be used to expand the criteria as outlined by Deputy Stevenson?
I can make no commitment, sir, until we have the data. Thank you. But I will do my very best to make sure that this is ring-fenced for the IVF service. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I'm merely asking that the money should be kept for the purposes for which it is already allocated. Will she not confirm that that will indeed be the case?
Thank you, sir. We'll do our very best, sir.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The Children and Civil Status Law, which will be in force hopefully by the end of this year, means that same-sex couples need to use assisted reproduction to access their parental rights. And the Minister has previously agreed to address this, to erase that inequality. Could she advise of the progress on this, please?
Thank you, sir. This is certainly one of the criteria that we are looking in. We're exploring all avenues, and it's to be fair to everyone. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy, then final supplementary after that.
Yes, thank you, sir. Would the Minister commit to addressing this by the time the Children's Civil Status Law comes into force, please?
The team, thank you, sir. The team are working very hard, but I cannot commit to what we're able to do until we've got we've done all the review, sir. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Stevenson.
Yes, thank you, sir. Will the Assistant Minister set out the policy priorities that she and her team will be working to, should it be possible to widen the criteria following that review? What is the team aiming to achieve with the funding that's available? And if possible, is it also possible to commit that there won't be a reduction in the budget for next year on the argument that this year has been underspent?
Thank you, sir. The team are working on this and they are reviewing all aspects, and when they have an answer, I will report back to the Deputy. Thank you, sir.
We come to question 13. The Deputy Jeune will ask of the Minister for Social Security. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain the reason for reintroducing the trainee minimum wage and detail the process undertaken to move away from the States Assembly's decision to adopt P5 2023, which saw the integration in 2024 of the trainee minimum wage into a single minimum wage?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. In taking the decision, I think it's important that I contextualise what a different place we were in from when the Assembly decided to harmonise the trainee rate with the minimum wage. I'm really proud that we now have a significantly higher minimum wage. Following the raising of the minimum wage in April to £13 an hour, I received feedback from both employer and employee representatives as to difficulties taking on apprentices, as well as similar feedback from the chair of the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel and other colleagues within the States Assembly. Following this, I asked for detailed economic advice from the Chief Economic Advisor. It was important for me to listen to the range of views and information that I have received. I have always been clear that any decision on this would be taken in collaboration with the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning to ensure that there are sufficient opportunities available and real viable alternatives to post-16 in-school education. I'm grateful to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning and Skills Jersey for the close cooperation over the last few months. I had to make the announcement and decision during the summer recess so that I could make the announcement in August ahead of new apprentices taken on in 2025 academic year. I'm also pleased to have issued new guidelines so that we avoid any exploitation of the trainee wage. Additionally, in consideration of the rate and how to set that, I ensured that we did not go to a lower rate than the £10.50 an hour that was agreed by the Assembly when they agreed to harmonise the rate. Of course, I would remind employers that this is a minimum rate and they can choose to pay more if they wish to.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister accept that uncertainty around the minimum wage and trainee wage has created this instability for young workers and employers, with many choosing not to take on apprenticeships? And how is she addressing these uncertainties to make up for this lost year for trainees?
So I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that what the Deputy is saying is correct. If she has any evidence to suggest that, then please could she pass that on to me. I acted as swiftly as I could, given the information that I had to hand and the advice I was given.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister says that the landscape has changed since the original proposition from Deputy Andrews, but it hasn't changed since June, and at a scrutiny hearing in June, I asked the Minister whether she supported different training rates, and she replied, I think I would see that as being quite discriminatory. If somebody is doing the same job, it does not matter what age they are. Can she explain what has changed since then?
Yes, sir, I can explain what has changed since then. I worked with officers to construct a really specific set of guidelines to ensure that only employees that are on very, very specific traineeships and apprenticeships are eligible to receive that rate. That is different to what had been done in the past, whereby the rate could have been applied to any employee in their first 2 years of service, and I understand was abused by some employers in that respect.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. I wonder if also why the Minister has not brought a rescindment to the proposition that would establish the unification of those rates.
When the trainee rate was harmonised, the proposition at the time was amended to retain the the part of the legislation that enabled the Minister to make a trainee rate by order, and that is why I didn't bring a rescindment. Also, the timing for me to have brought a rescindment would have meant that I wouldn't have been able to make the change in time for the beginning of the academic year, and I thought that that may then lead to the consequences as described by the Deputy Jeanne in her previous question.
Deputy Doublé, then final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. How will the Minister track whether this change in policy is actually resulting in more trainee positions?
So I'll be working very closely and continue to work very closely with the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning and his team at Skills Jersey to ensure that we are receiving the results that we need and indeed developing the skills that we need on island.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And if it doesn't result in an increase, what's the Minister's plan then?
So I think then we'd need to look at the reasons for it not resulting in an increase, and it may well not be me that would need to take action, but other ministers, such as the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, but we'd need to see that evidence base first.
Final supplementary, Deputy Jeanne.
Thank you. So many of the questions have been asked, but the Minister was clear that she had to make the decision very quickly to help the academic term 2025. Would the Minister be able to publish as soon as possible, or with the cooperation of the Minister for Education, whether those traineeships have been fulfilled at Highlands, so that they could actually be fulfilled during the 2025, because it seemed very late in the day to get trainees to apply for that those Highland skills training. So could the Minister say when she could publish those, whether those courses have been filled or not, as soon as possible?
So, of course, that data isn't my data, that's the data of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, and I'm sure that he will answer any questions that other members or indeed scrutiny may have.
Well, we come to question 14, that Deputy Catherine Coates will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what procedures, if any, are in place to police the illegal and organised operation of receiving payment for offering lifts by unregulated non-DBS check drivers without adequate insurance? And if none, will she commit to addressing this issue?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. The ongoing use of illegal taxi operations remains a significant concern, requiring continued attention from the Department of Infrastructure with the support of the States of Jersey Police. SOJP routinely stop, engage with, and where offences are identified, investigate individuals operating outside the bounds of regulation. However, it should be noted that recent prosecutions have not resulted in successful convictions. It is recognised that a substantial proportion of islanders utilise informal Jersey lifts, use lift services commonly known as Jersey lifts. SOJP have maintained a proactive approach in delivering safeguarding messages and advise regarding the risks associated with improper use of such services. Where individuals are identified as posing a risk to public safety, SOJP will take proportionate action in accordance with their powers.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister concerned that at some point there could be an accident which is not covered by insurance, or an assault on a member of the public by one of these drivers while their customers may be especially vulnerable following a night out?
Sir, I would reiterate what the States of Jersey Police would say. It is not advisable for any member of the public to take a lift with somebody who is not regulated and has no DBS check. The police will continue to monitor and do what they can in relation to this matter, and I appreciate what the Deputy is saying in relation to the risks. And we can only continue to highlight those risks, sir, but at the current position that we are in, we have to say that, you know, we can advise people not to take those risks, sir, but we can only do what we can do, sir.
Deputy Tallier.
So this seems a very grey area, which I know many a Home Affairs Minister and Infrastructure Minister have struggled to resolve over the years. Could the Minister explain why she thinks there's been such a low conviction rate where prosecutions have taken place? And could she actually clarify how many decisions have been made to prosecute, and have any of them ever resulted in a successful prosecution?
Sir, as far as I'm aware, there has been no successful prosecution. I'm aware of one that went through the courts in, there was one that was a driver, the same driver on two separate occasions, was reported in 2023, and a prosecution was brought, but that was unsuccessful. In relation to the further details that the Deputy requires, I can certainly make inquiries to find out whether and how many others have actually got to the stage of prosecution. It is very difficult to prosecute it. It's very difficult to be able to establish that the people aren't known to each other and they're not just having a lift home, and whether they're just giving some money for petrol. So it is a very difficult situation, and so we can only continue to reiterate the fact that it is not advisable to utilise this type of service because the insurance is not likely to be valid should an accident occur.
Supplementary question, Dick.
It seems strange for the Minister and the police to be giving advice not to use something which isn't an illegal taxi service, which is like if somebody wants to hitch a lift, presumably it's okay to hitch a lift, so long as it's mutually consensual. So could the Minister maybe advise whether energy would be better spent making sure that DVS enforce their own permits so that those who are not taxi drivers, who do not have a taxi licence, should not be carrying out taxi-type activities? And could that indeed maybe involve something such as a mystery shopper programme where such services which are being offered illegally could be fished out?
Minister.
Sir, I see the idea of the mystery shopper, sir. However, the difficulty with this is that this legislation does not sit with the Home Affairs Minister, it sits with the Infrastructure Minister, so I don't regulate how people do or don't get cab registrations, if you like. I think, I suppose you could say that you could use the shopping type thing, but sir, I think the thing is that this has sort of grown, and it is very difficult to be able to establish what is somebody actually giving a lift to a friend, as most of us may do on a regular basis, whether somebody gives a lift to a friend, and whether somebody else may not be able to drive and have paid them for that purpose. However, as I said, it is very difficult offence to actually prosecute. And I will find out the data, but as I said, it's very difficult to prosecute and to establish the full facts.
Deputy Ozouf, Connor Tarpson, Saviour, then final supplementary. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister have any idea, and I appreciate her difficulties, but as the wearing her Home Affairs hat, does she have any idea, or do the police have any idea of the scale of the use of so-called Facebook lifts in comparison to the amount of regulated taxi rides, say on a Saturday night?
Sir, quite frankly, no, I don't, because every night you will have a certain amount of taxis that will be on the ranks, and those will take people home. There'll be a certain amount of people who will go on to and book one through illicit lifts. I don't think that data is available, but I can certainly ask the question, but I doubt that it is going to be available. So I can ask the question, but I doubt very much whether that data will be available.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Just very briefly, so I'm not currently on Facebook, and so I don't know. But when I was, I understand it's a closed group on Facebook, which you have to agree to join. Once inside, you can see all the posts offering requesting lifts. And may I build on the suggestion of the previous questioner when saying that you can be a mystery shopper on there, because my understanding is it is a very significant amount of users on it. And would the authorities within the police think that it would be a good idea, and does she think it's a good idea to ask that question, just so we can get a handle on how much of this is in this Facebook group?
Sir, I can certainly ask the questions, but as I said, and I will ask the States of Jersey Police whether there's any way that they can actually get access to the Facebook page. But as I said, sir, this is one of a number of issues in relation to roads policing, and the police have to take priorities. And at this stage, this may not be as high a priority as the other 5 that I mentioned in the Fatal 5, sir.
Colonel Harbison Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I know this is something that the present and previous ministers of infrastructure have wrestled with. A little unfair to have a go at DVS, because they can only regulate what is legal, not what is illegal. But Deputy Ozouf has picked me to the post regarding the Facebook sites, which do advertise this extensively. But it's definitely something we need to have.
So, is this a question?
It's coming up, sir. Coming up. It's obviously insurances will be null and void. So will the minister agree to work with other fellow ministers to nip this in the bud finally? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm always happy to work with the other minister.
Supplemental question, Conor. Final supplementary question, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Although Jersey Lift started as a way to help people who couldn't wait for a taxi and costs were reimbursed by the passenger, is the minister aware that things have moved on? So with Facebook groups now with 14,000 members and another with 28,000 members, and there are people doing this as a job and not paying any tax or social security, almost unregulated and potentially dangerous industry, and this is not fair to the legal taxi service.
Minister.
Sir, I will ask the question of the States of Jersey Police to see whether they can get access to these sites. I'm not sure that they can. But as I said, there has been work on that. They continue to monitor what's going on in the evenings, and some prosecutions have been forthcoming but have been unsuccessful. So, as I said, I'll ask them again about what or access they do or don't have to these sites. But I think clearly, sir, what we need, the message we need to be saying is that this is not necessarily a safe mode of transport home, because if there is an accident, then you may not be insured.
Come to question 15. The Conor St Helier will ask the Minister for the Environment. Conor.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether more units of accommodation than were originally approved were permitted in the Northern Quarter development in St Helier on the basis of the intention of Andium Homes to seek to extend the Millennium Town Park?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the planning history for the site, the Northern Quarter, formerly the BOA warehouse in Rue La Mosrier, is considerable. Subsequent to outline planning permission being granted on appeal in September 2016 for 169 dwellings, the scheme has been amended a number of times through the planning process to a final total of 195 units. Building records confirm this is the number constructed, but I have no indication of a specific justification for that increase, although we did find a housing mix commentary from 2020 that seems to indicate there was a demand for one-bedroom units at that time, so it may be that the unit mix was changed for this reason, and that resulted in the additional units count.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, sir. The Minister will be aware that several large developments have been completed or are under development in the area of the Millennium Town Park. Is he concerned that there is simply not enough green space in the Millennium Town Park to cater for all the new residents who are coming into the northern part of St Helier?
So the Constable will understand that I'm not going to pass comment in the Assembly on any potential expansion of the town park or otherwise due to the potential for planning applications coming in the future. But the only thing I would say is that I've visited not only the Northern Quarter, but I've looked at the other sites which are under development currently, and they all conform to standards which we've asked. Some have got, and Northern Quarter in particular, got some outdoor space. And it's a subjective thing about the amount of park space that may be needed near these developments. But they do all have recreational areas already.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. The Minister answered the question as asked, which was to do with the number of units in the development and referred to the planning history. Can he confirm that the planning history did not involve expansion of the site as opposed to increase in the number of units?
I can confirm that I believe that to be the case, if only in as much as that the Northern Quarter is a very specific site. And it's always been my understanding that the development may include more units now, but the actual size of the site itself couldn't enlarge because it's surrounded by boundaries and roads.
Supplemental question. Deputy Ozouf, then final supplementary.
So, would the Minister agree agree with the constituent of mine, actually not sure it's a constituent, but member of the Honorary Police, that pointed out to me that Andium do have a no-ball policy in relation to their developments, and such that whilst the Infrastructure Minister's laudable plans to get people active, that has a cost with parking, etc. And would he take the point that you can't have any balls and kids want to play with balls, and actually the town park actually, or something similar in terms of green space, is what's actually going to be required? When the facts change, I change my mind. Does he?
So I did say that every unit has a minimum amount of open space that has to be provided with each unit, and that is the case. But I can't comment on ball playing in these areas. I can't say I know anything about this, sir, but the Deputy, if true, the Deputy does make a point. Young children like to play with any manner of the things, but quite often that involves balls. Thank you.
Supplemental question. Final supplementary, Conor Tubbs.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate the Minister is somewhat prevented from commenting on the issues around the extension of the Millennium Town Park. But I would hope that he has seen how well used the existing park is, and would he agree with me that we really need to look very seriously to see whether we can increase the space in order to cater for the residents of St Helier?
So I can confirm to the Constable that I've witnessed myself the use that that particular park gets, and other parks in St Helier. I've witnessed for myself off island the benefits to communities of open green space in the built up area, and I would encourage as many as possible to be built. But I'm not going to go further than that. I won't be taking part in the debate at our next sitting as to whether we extend the park or not. What we build, as I've said before, it could well be subject to a planning application, which I may need to determine. Thank you, sir.
We will come to question 16. The Deputy Gardener will ask the Housing Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister confirm whether emergency accommodation in Jersey is currently only provided by charitable organisations such as the Shelter Trust and the Women Refuge, similar? And will he also advise whether in his assessment that the current provision meets the existing and future needs of vulnerable islanders?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Andium Homes and the Housing Advice Service don't themselves directly manage emergency accommodation, and all that is provided for in Jersey is provided and managed by charitable organisations. There's around 200 bed spaces provided there, but a very significant proportion of that is in facilities which are indirectly owned by the government through Andy M Homes, who provide them to those charities in order to provide that service from them. The question on meeting existing and future needs is an interesting question, because of course the ideal scenario is that future need is mitigated as much as possible, and I'm confident that the work of the Housing Advice Service and Andium in engaging with those charities is right now probably at the best level that it has ever been before, and their communication is much better than it had been in the past, and their ability to be present with those organisations to help build pathways for residents there to go into permanent accommodation is the best that it's ever been. And I'm also assured that when you get the odd incident where the provision that's available either isn't suitable or accessible to a particular person or household because their needs are particularly unique, that because of the directions provided by myself and the Social Security Minister, our teams are instructed to do whatever they can in that moment as an emergency, if necessary, to make sure that those people are not left on the street and will be left with a roof above their head one way or another through that service.
Supplemental question.
Absolutely, and thank you, for Minister, for creating the map of coordinated approach. I'm sure that Minister is aware that the last week after leaving second emergency accommodation, charity accommodation for a government-provided hotel, a single mother with her daughter were refused check-in and ended up sitting on the bench in the Millennium Park at 9 o'clock at night. Even though the solution was found at the end, does the Minister believe this demonstrates a safe and coordinated system of emergency housing provision, and what immediate steps he will take follow this incident, that no family in crisis is ever again left on the bench in Millennium Park?
Sir, I am obviously not going to go into the private details of a case like that, as no minister should on the floor of this Assembly, other than to say that there's substantially more to it than that. But I'm grateful for the Deputy for acknowledging in the framing of her question that a solution was provided in this case.
Deputy Ozouf.
I wonder if the Minister would be kind enough to explain the scale of emergency accommodation required, whilst never wanting to deal with any constituency matters. I've been dealing with one case where the individual concerned was not able to get any accommodation at all and was going to be homeless for 6 weeks unless an intervention was made, which was not available.
Again, so for that specific example, I'd want to know more about the facts to be able to offer a more concrete answer to that. But there, generally speaking, is capacity within the bed spaces that are provided by the charities in Jersey, and my department is constantly in dialogue with those people to try to assist them into permanent housing, because obviously the best solution is to bypass emergency housing altogether and go straight into a permanent home in which to be safe and secure. But the instruction from myself and the Social Security Minister is that when an emergency case arises and there's a risk of street homelessness, that they are instructed to engage immediately to prevent that from happening. And that can involve various things, including paying for a hotel, and that will simply be signed off, so that won't be an immediate barrier there through bureaucracy or anything like that. Obviously, that's not the ideal scenario, but they are instructed to do that to make sure that that doesn't happen. But that does require good communication so that we know who these people are, know where they are, and can contact them to enable that kind of solution. And often that can be quite difficult.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
I welcome the Minister's issues about personal details, and I will take up the case with him, but I wonder whether or not he would be prepared to explain to the Assembly at some point the scale of individuals who are unable to find accommodation because of the current state of the private sector rental market. Because I was horrified with this particular incident, and it's not an isolated one. And so I understand the challenges that he has, but I wonder if members could be alerted to the scale of issues that we are having with individuals that are simply unable to be housed, and in doing their best. And we obviously celebrate the fact the OBE was given to the former chief executive, but there's more to do.
Indeed, and on that final point, very well deserved, because the transformation that's enabled us to do so much better work that happened under his leadership. So, of course, I'd give Deputy Ozouf the undertaking to do that, and perhaps we can talk offline about the detail that he'd want included in that. The 2 points I'd make is that we are now working with those charities to collect data in a way that we weren't previously, and that does help give some useful insights and some evidence to some of the things we probably suspected already. And he talks about accessing private accommodation. Obviously, the issue of housing qualifications is a huge part of that, and that is a big part of the feedback that I get from those, that finding pathways to permanent housing can often be very difficult because of that, and that's an important angle in the conversation.
I have Deputy Jeune, Tadier and Doublé, then final supplementary. No other questions. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister agree that islanders who are homeless or at risk of homelessness should have a clear statutory right to accommodation as per the UK?
Yes, I do believe that, and I'd like us to get to that position. That will be a piece of legislation that will need to be drawn up at some point in order to do that. But I don't think that that's something that, in terms of a law, could be commenced immediately, because we would have to first make sure that we have the infrastructure in place within our public services and other service providers to make sure that when we provide a statutory right to be housed, that we actually know how we will deliver that. And I think as soon as we get to a point where we're confident that we can enact such a right, then I would want us to legislate and go in that direction, most definitely.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I welcome the Minister's answer to that question. And maybe the Minister could give a bit more detail on what kind of infrastructure he would see needs to be put in place ahead of any statutory rights to accommodation, and what kind of timeline that would actually look like. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's a difficult question to answer. We know that there are places, I think in the UK, there's some kind of statutory right along the lines that the Deputy is referring to, but in reality, it's often not provided for by local authorities because of the difficulties they have. So even though it exists, in reality, it's not actually to much benefit to those who would need it. So the things that we would have to think about would be what duties there are on public services for what they do when they encounter somebody who meets a statutory definition of homelessness. That wouldn't exclusively be the housing part of the employment, Social Security and Housing Department. It would be all departments. It could be a health service that someone's first interaction is with when they're facing homelessness. So we would have to work out how that duty is followed by all public services, and what they have to initiate as a result of it and who they contact, and those pathways would have to be clear so that everybody knows what their duty is and how they fulfil it when such a thing is made law.
Deputy Tadier.
Is a family's status as either for 5 years residency for income support purposes and benefits, or 10 years for housing residency, a consideration when it comes to emergency accommodation, and does that pose any problems in what the Minister is aspiring to do for this area?
So I don't think it's necessarily an issue for accessing emergency accommodation in that if somebody presents themselves who doesn't have those rights, then some allowances will be made for it, and much of the bed spaces in the charitable sector won't exclusively be for people with entitled status, and I know the Social Security Minister would make funding available if necessary to help somebody even if they didn't have their years in Jersey otherwise. That would, the difficulty that it can lead to, if somebody doesn't have their housing qualifications, is that their options for a pathway into permanent housing then become more limited, because as it currently stands, they wouldn't be entitled to social housing, and their access to private rental housing would be limited as well. And that does often pose difficulties for people in those situations and makes it harder for my team to map out a pathway for them.
I suppose the question might arise reasonably from a member of the public is how long would one expect emergency accommodation to be paid for somebody who doesn't have 5 years status in the island, and would consideration, for example, of whether that person has children with them or not also play into that decision?
The Deputy phrased that as a question a member of the public might ask. What was the question Deputy Tadjia was asking, just to help me inform the answer?
It's the same question essentially, but does in the provision of emergency accommodation, i.e. whether it's paid for by this Minister or signed off by the Minister for Social Security as a discretionary payment, what consideration is given to somebody's residential status in that, and ultimately in how much support they will be given for seeking either emergency or proper housing in the longer term?
It's a very difficult question to answer, sir, and I think I'd want to give more thought to it before giving an answer off the top of my head. And I'd want to look at what we've done in circumstances where that might have been relevant previously. But as I said, the instruction is that we are to do everything we can to ensure that nobody ends up sleeping on the street because of an emergency housing situation, and that would be irrespective. That would be based on who they are and what help we can offer them, and we wouldn't just leave someone out in the dark because they didn't have particular status.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The Minister published at the end of last year, I believe, a policy response report in relation to recommendation 59 of the VOG report, which relates to this issue. Could the Minister please update the Assembly as to the progress of the completion of the recommendations within that report?
Is she referring to the follow-on accommodation recommendations? Indeed, and I met very recently with the CEO of Frida to talk about this. And it's one of those things where if something is follow-on accommodation, but it's a decent and nice home, you would actually want that to be permanent accommodation, and so you're not putting a family through upheaval. When I met with the CEO, we discussed some potential options that could be available through Andium Homes because of Andium's building programme, which some of this is contingent on, and building up capacity in that, and that gives us the freedom to provide some kinds of access that we haven't done previously that might not be a very standard social housing application. So, and then I also met last week with the CEO of Andium to talk about some of that capacity and what we might do with that, but there are some options there, and we want to think a bit more about how we initiate those, and I'll look forward to being able to do so when we're in a position to do so. But the conversations are definitely happening.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublé.
I thank the Minister for his answer. And at the end of the report that we're talking about, he states that a funding stream will need to be identified to fulfil all the recommendations of that report. Was a business case submitted as part of the government plan, and will there be funding in the government plan to see this through so that follow-on accommodation can be made available?
No, sir, there hasn't been a business case for this government budget coming up, and there are elements of this that don't necessarily need to have business cases for funding through this mechanism to deliver, because much of Andium's finances are independent of the government budget, and there are things within their capacity that if they're able to deliver, they wouldn't feature in a government budget in that way. So if that's ends up being a preferred option, it wouldn't go through that formal process.
Final supplementary, Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister indicated in his answer there are several steps that need to be taken. If we go towards the statutory, there are several steps need to be taken to address Deputy Dublé. A question: would the Minister commit to 1, 2 or 3 steps that he will take till the end of this term to progress on the homelessness matters?
Well, so I think I've already outlined many of those. A big part of that is developing more capacity within our social housing sector. That is ongoing, something we're doing literally every day. We are, through the Housing Advice Service, constantly improving the communication and services that they're able to provide. It was not that long ago that such a service didn't exist, but now we have a team of specialists who are now physically going to the homelessness charities, meeting with people directly and trying to find bespoke pathways for them. That didn't exist previously, and we've been working on expanding that ever since. So there are steps that are underway that we can witness already.
Well, we come to question 17. The Deputy Renner will ask the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Following the issuing on 7th August 2025 of 2 compliance notices by his department to the former New Dunes restaurant at La Poulante, will the Minister explain the rationale for why 2 months was allowed for compliance to be achieved? And will he also state whether it is his assessment that the current legislation for ensuring compliance is fit for purpose?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the authority to issue enforcement notices rests with the Chief Officer and not with myself as Minister, and I'm therefore not able to explain the Chief Officer's rationale for allowing a 2-month compliance period. Additionally, as I may be called upon to objectively determine an appeal proceedings that may result from this enforcement action, I'm unable to comment on the appropriateness of the compliance period set by the Chief Officer. However, I can say that the Planning and Building Jersey Law 2002 provides for a wide range of powers to secure compliance with enforcement notices, including prosecution, injunction, and works in default. I consider these powers fit for purpose in instances of non-compliance with notices. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. Does the Minister accept that his answer, and indeed the 2 months compliance period, risk the credibility of his department at a time when people who do comply with planning rules would expect to see other people who do not have justice imposed on them pretty swiftly?
Times that are used in enforcement notices and compliance are always difficult, and I think it's always incumbent to make sure that a time period that it's set is set for a period of time which is achievable, practically achievable, physically achievable, and if it would be, for example, a future decision that I might take considering water standards, it may be that I have to set time period which would allow the water company enough time to practically put in place the steps required. I could go on with any number of examples, but I can't talk about the specific case, but I would say that in any case, one has to be fair to both sides, and a time period has to be set in which it would be practical for the person to change whatever is being asked to be changed. I'm sorry, I can't be a bit more specific, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
So speaking as an elected politician, maybe rather than an enforcer, could the Minister confirm whether he understands the level of public dissatisfaction, not only in St Brelard but throughout the whole island, that a planning application which has been refused for change of use now, as many islanders have said, the owner seems to be putting 2 fingers up to the planning system. I'm not sure if that's parliamentary, sir, but that's what they've said in a public group. And in fact, there's an allegation that this is being used for Airbnb or as some kind of residential use, even though it doesn't have that permission, and that actually allowing 2 months for this to go on whilst there's still a long period of summer left is seen by many islanders to be government being weak when somebody simply decides to bypass the legitimacy of the planning process. Is that something the Minister, as a fellow politician, has sympathy with?
It may well be the case, sir, but I am in a difficult situation when I stand here as Minister for the Environment and asked to have an opinion as a backbencher. All breaches will be investigated by my department, but I can't control people's behaviour. If they wish to go off and do things, it's then incumbent upon my officers to go and investigate, and if they find that things are not as they should be, enforcement notices are issued, and the person who has the enforcement notice issued has a period of time to rectify the thing they are being asked to change. I can't really say more than that, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Supplementary, sir. Thank you. Because this relates to, I think, a level playing field, would it be correct for Deputy Renner and myself to go back to our St Brelard constituents and say to them, many who are homeowners, that it would be okay for them to put illegal structures on their premises and that they can expect a 2 months grace period for those structures to stay before they will be asked for them to be removed, before they will have to remove them from the Minister's department, or will there be different rules applied to those constituents who also wish to break the planning rules in future?
As I just said, sir, the officers in my department will investigate all breaches, and if necessary, enforcement notices will be issued. If those enforcement notices are not complied with, that will then be taken to a step further, with evidence will be produced to show that the compliance has not taken place. Legal advice will be taken and a prosecution will hopefully follow. We will always pursue non-compliance, and I'd like to think that the department is always fair and treats everybody in an equal, equitable way. But every case is different and unique, but in every case I'd like to think that we're fair to the person that we're issuing the notice to make sure that where we do issue a notice with a time period, that time period allows the person sufficient time to be able to put the situation correctly.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renner.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure how members of the public are going to react when I have to explain that the Minister hasn't asked the Chief Officer why they have allowed 2 months. But perhaps he could explain whether he has asked what potential enforcement measures are available if the 2-month deadline is not met.
So the reason I haven't asked my Chief Officer is that he went on leave before this question was received, and he's a rather long way away and I haven't been able to contact him. But he does have, as I said before, various powers, including prosecution, injunction, and works in default. And actually, when it comes to works in default, I can say to the Deputy, and I'm sure he's aware, those powers are vested in myself as Minister. And such an option would be subject to a ministerial decision. I would need to get the work priced, and works in default for members' information is where I undertake to do the work myself and then seek to reclaim that money from the person. It's not quite as straightforward as it might sound. One needs to be very careful and diligent about what work you're having done, and you don't want to get yourself in trouble. But those are the options. In this particular case, as I've said before, I know this is the final question, but it's a live compliance matter, and I really can't comment any further. Thank you, sir.
Very well. We now come to question 18. The Deputy Doublé will ask of the Minister for Social Security. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether the government intends to seek the extension of or ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the UNCRPD, to Jersey, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. Earlier this year, I raised the possibility of extending the ratification of the CRDP with a range of stakeholders and put it on the agenda for discussion with the Disability and Inclusion Advisory Group. The group's discussion was focused on making sure that any decision to ratify must enhance and not distract from the government's aim of improving inclusivity and accessibility across the island. And they said that it was a case of ensuring that the resources that we have are targeted at the areas that will have the greatest impact. So following on from that discussion, I have ensured that the Disability and Inclusion team will be undertaking a process to assess our current policy and practice against the relevant articles of the Convention. This will help them to determine the value of extending ratification and explore how best this can be achieved, including identifying a realistic and meaningful timeframe. It is important to note that the Jersey Disability Strategy is already grounded in the principles of the UN CRPD. As such, the Convention is already guiding the government's actions, and we are absolutely aligned with its principles.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublin.
I thank the Minister for her response, and I look forward to hearing the outcome of that. Could she give an idea of a time frame for when we might be able to hear an update on that? And also, is there going to be an update to the Disability and Inclusion Strategy anytime soon?
Thank you, sir. As I said, the Disability and Inclusion team are currently undertaking that process. I do have a Disability and Inclusion Advisory Group next week, at which I would hope to receive a further update, and I will continue to update the Deputy and her scrutiny panel as this work progresses.
Very well, come now to question 19. The Deputy Ozouf will ask the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether he intends to seek amendments to the Bridging Island Plan, particularly in relation for homes available for families to rent, or does he intend to leave any planning framework changes until the next island plan is brought to this Assembly?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So the established legal framework which governs any review of the island plan would preclude any review of the island plan before the end of this political term. The Bridging Island Plan is, however, already delivering family homes for rent on the sites zoned for the provision of affordable homes, along with the provision of family homes on other sites being developed by Andium Homes. As I just said, sir, there's insufficient time to undertake and complete the requisite stages required for any review of the current plan before the end of this political term, and currently the existing legal framework does not enable the review of part of an island plan. But I am proposing that the law is changed to enable this to happen. This proposal is currently the subject of consultation and is part of the Planning Services review. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Sir, the last part of that question was very welcome indeed, because does the Minister agree that the Housing Minister's comments over the summer break that there's a need for more family homes, and the background to the Bridging Island Plan disproportionately delivering flats with 75% of supply being apartments, a fiscal policy panel warnings that there's undersupply of appropriate homes? Will he then give any indication of when the legal changes will be made so that we can say to our constituents that there is going to be a prioritisation of putting back what should have been done in the Bridging Island Plan?
Sir, as I said just a few minutes ago, it is my intention to change the law so that a section of the island plan can be debated in isolation from the rest of the plan. I thought for some time that this was necessary. We live in an ever-changing world where circumstances can change very, very quickly, and we've seen that. Before the last island plan was debated, there was huge demand. Population was soaring. And here we are, what seems like just a few minutes later, and circumstances have certainly changed. And it may not be just on population and housing. It may be things like trying to find sites for light industry to be put, or energy, for example. We know the political scenarios around the globe change so quickly. So I think it's vital that a small part of the island plan should be able to be debated in isolation from the rest of it. Those proposals are out to consultation. It's my intention that the changes will be made, I hope, before Christmas, but certainly before the next election.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has said he can't amend the plan, which is correct, but he can issue guidance. and the provision of family homes is something the government he is in is highlighting and investing in Jersey. So is he considering, in the interim, issuing guidance on the correct or the appropriate housing mix so he can achieve the government he's part of ambition sooner?
Sir, I have a number of pieces of guidance which I'm in the middle of trying to get out of the door, so to speak, along with a huge amount of other work, and I can't say to the Deputy that changing guidance on this particular issue is something which I'd thought about. I will certainly go away and take his views on board, as he will know only too well. I can't change policy, and guidance has to adhere to policy. It can't change policy, but I will certainly go away and have a look at that and see whether something can be done in short order.
Supplemental question. Deputy Renouf, and then final supplementary.
Yes, sir. Will there be a new objective assessment of housing need prior or as part of that process, given that the Housing Minister described the current assessment of housing need as a work of fiction?
So I don't intend to comment on the quote from the Housing Minister, but what I may say is that it does appear that, as I said, things are changing very, very quickly. Anybody who owns a one-bedroom flat, for example, is looking to dispose of it, will find that their property is being put on the market with a very, very large number of other properties. There are issues around people in first-time buyer properties looking to move on who can't because the cost of their house has increased. There's a number of issues around housing. Housing is not my remit, but I think there's definitely a case for looking as ever. And one of the reasons for changing the plan is to allow us to look and make decisions and make some changes. And that's the reason I think it's important that the law is changed.
Supplemental, then.
Sir, could I just, standing order, just query? I did ask, will there be a new objective assessment of housing need? I don't believe that question was addressed.
If it was, I'm afraid it passed me by.
I may not have answered that question, sir, but I would think that if an assessment is done of housing needs, it may well be that there's some new direction of travel set and some new targets.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister just clarify for members, will it be only the Minister who can open up the island plan to amendment after his law change, or will it be ordinary members? And is there any particular area that he is prepared to say he will be opening up for amendment?
Well, the first thing I want to say, sir, is there's no particular area that I have in mind immediately to open up for island plan review. But this is out to consultation, and it's a very interesting question that the Deputy poses, one that I've certainly considered myself. And as much as it might seem like a good idea for someone sitting on the back benches to think they could bring a proposition to review a section of the island plan, as Minister, I would be slightly terrified by the prospect of waking up every morning with another backbencher reviewing another section of the island plan. So I think in reality we would have to be very selective as to who would have the ability to bring that proposition forward, whether it would be only the Planning Minister, whether it would be only the Chief Minister, or a recommendation from Council of Ministers. There would have to be a mechanism put in place which would ensure that this Assembly is not asked to sit in judgment on sections of the island plan every other sitting.
Final supplementary, Deputy Ozouf.
So the previous questioner asked about a housing needs assessment, and the Minister said that he wasn't the Housing Minister, but certainly in other post holders' time as the Environment Minister or President of Environment and Public Services, the majority of the time, Planning President, most of the time it was housing that dominated all issues. Would the Minister also agree that that he would be, and the Council of Ministers needs, an economic impact assessment of what is going on in the housing crisis that is not the crisis that we thought it was, but now a crisis of oversupply and people not buying, with developers not building and the rest of it? And it seems that he agrees with the underlying sentiment that one is picking up, that there is absolute carnage in the market generally, inexplicable decisions. Will you get an economic assessment of why this is and what the government in advance of maybe the budget could do about it?
Well, I think it's incumbent on any government to try to keep an eye and a handle on what's happening in the housing market, and in Jersey particularly. We hear a lot about family homes, but family homes are being delivered on rezoned sites, and maybe the Deputy may say, Sir, that there may not be enough, but the Housing Minister will have an idea of how many we need. He can look and see what is available on the rezoned sites and what is still to come forward. He can look at some of the applications which have been approved and still have not to start being built. But I can agree with Deputy Ozouf, so I think it's incumbent upon us to keep an eye on what is happening, to look at the demand, the type of demand, and particularly the type of house that's in demand, and to try to adjust accordingly, because while one like myself can be very much wedded to the supply and demand theory, it's all very well having a huge amount of supply in one sector and nothing in another when it's the other sector that really needs those units. So I take the Deputy's views on board, sir.
Very well, we come to question 20 that Deputy Wilson will ask of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to reports of the difficulties encountered by the visitor economy earlier in the year, will the Minister explain whether that economy recovered and performed as expected over the summer season? And will he also state whether it is his assessment that the measures in place to attract visitors during the autumn shoulder months will sustain the visitor economy into next year?
Thank you, sir, and thank the Deputy for her question. The visitor economy, sir, has faced many headwinds over the last 4 or 5 years, sir. That started with Brexit, it moved most clearly into COVID, and now is having to cope with price rises in its structure as well, sir, such as obviously increasing wages and the such like, sir. On top of that, we are seeing consumer demand fall in jurisdictions that would normally feed business to Jersey in terms of visitor accommodation, sir. So in the sense that, has it been where I would like it to be? The answer is a quite simple no, sir. I would like to see more tourists come to Jersey than we have had. But I am pleased to see that there are signs of recovery and that there are signs that the work we are doing, and I work incredibly closely with both the Chamber of Commerce and the Jersey Hospitality Association, constantly in contact with them, and Visit Jersey, to try to find ways to create that stronger base for the future, sir. And we are seeing that in increasing visitor numbers from the UK have come by sea, 4% higher than last year's in 2020, last year in 2024. Yes, we have seen fall off in French, particularly day trippers coming to Jersey, but that obviously does not affect the hotel industry. We are seeing across the UK market that is weak, sir. Ireland, their first quarter fell by 23% in terms of visitors from the UK. So what we are seeing is many headwinds, but what I am committed to is continuing to work very, very closely with all the concerned associations and parties, and I know it's difficult. It is something that vexes me and that I work with on a daily basis to try to make sure that we are doing everything we can to sustain Jersey's visitor economy, not just for this year, not just this autumn, but long into the future, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, the Minister, for his response. He provided some valuable insights into some of the challenges there, but I just wondered, could he provide us with some more content as to what specifically is the government doing to address the downturn in the economy at this time, in the visitor economy at this time?
Sir, naturally, when government responds to what it is doing, it tends to look to the money that it is spending, sir. I have said these things in previous assemblies, but I will do so again, sir. We have provided over the 2 years, that's this year and next year, £4 million in extra funding for Visit Jersey. That's on top of their base budget. We have seen £2 million over those 2 years also sent to Ports of Jersey to secure new air routes, sir. We have, obviously, through Visit Jersey, they choose where to put their funding and they choose the types of engagement that they wish to engage with. And they have obviously chosen Bergerac, and that's with the support of the Council of Ministers. And on top of that, later this month, I hope to be lodging the new alcohol licensing law, which is aimed very much at reducing barriers to business. We've reduced the de minimis threshold, digitalised the GST refund scheme. That's an attempt to show Jersey as a lower price destination, because price is a big problem in Jersey. Price is probably the main problem that we have. We've also reopened the Visitor Information Centre, and we've had trialling of free entry at Jersey heritage sites such as the Jersey Museum, which drives footfall there. So these are just, and as I said at the last assembly, I have very much spoken with the JHA and created a working group, sir, that meets monthly, and also working with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're looking particularly at data on that side of things, sir. They are just a few of the things we're doing. That's not even talking about heritage investments, which run to the many millions, which are also designed to increase Jersey's attractiveness as a destination.
Our deputies, Gardner, Tadier and Ozouf, and then a final supplementary if we have time for them. So, Deputy Gardner.
Thanks, Minister. I'm sure that Minister, I'm sure that you're aware about critical infrastructure resilience transport links report that was published by CNAG. When I looked through the report, so I found that in 2024, expectations for sea passengers by the parts of Jersey in their strategic plan was just under 500,000 arrivals. But within the report, CNAG confirmed that during 2024, we had only 272,000 passengers arriving into Jersey's 3 sea routes and more than half visitors coming from France. Would the Minister consider to review strategic plans compared to the reality, and what steps can be taken when we have this disparity between planned and arrivals?
Sir, I think it's really important that we understand that the customer is changing. And so we have seen a big shift, a very large shift from sea arrivals to air arrivals. That's something which is changing almost on a daily basis, sir. That is one of the reasons why you are seeing those changes. I do worry, obviously, because I know that the ferry decision that I made is something which many people want to maintain as an issue, sir. And I do worry that people try to look for that one thing which is the cause of all the problems. As I've just listed, there are many, many reasons why we have had a more difficult season this season, sir. But I think it's very important that we understand that there is change in our customer base, there is change in Jersey's cost base, and there is change in literally the money available to people. One of the things we are seeing is a much, much later booking situation, and that's one reason why Visit Jersey's autumn campaign has been working, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Absolutely, Minister. It's 2024. It's before any ferry situation. So my worry that we are thinking about development, for example, the development of the ports, which thinking will bring new clients, when we're actually not getting into almost half of the arrivals without any ferry situation. What is reassessment we need to do for our future Jersey product?
It's very interesting, sir, because I spend a lot of time thinking about the port redevelopments, and I do wonder, not so much just on the tourism front, because I don't think a new terminal will ever bring more passengers. It's what is the port there for? And I think our port could do a lot more, and probably does need to do a lot more into the future, rather than just passengers and freight. It should be looking at marine engineering and the such like service, and it already is servicing offshore wind farms in other places. I always am prepared and continue to keep strategic plans under review. And as I said, in my case, I'm working constantly and consistently with the trade associations in regards to hospitality so that they can see we are working together cooperatively to try to ensure that tourism remains a key industry for Jersey, because it is a key industry for Jersey that maintains not just itself, but maintains Jersey's connectivity as a whole, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
So would the Minister also seek to speak to the the wider commercial business and retail community in St Helier? I'm sure the Minister, like me, will have been to places like Dinar, all sorts of small towns in Saint-Martin in Brittany, where shops stay open, surprise, surprise, well, even after 6 p.m. and that you can buy ice creams even after 8 p.m. at night, and there are crowds of people. And even on Sundays, you can't differentiate which day of the week it is when you're in St Malo in the summer and even into the shoulder months. So is there a wider conversation that the Minister would be willing to have about how we make sure that not just St Helier, but that Jersey is open for business, for locals, for business visitors and for tourists alike, certainly in the summer, but all year round?
Minister.
I think that's an absolutely fascinating and very, very valid set of perspectives by the Deputy, sir. We have, and it was under my predecessor, now Chief Minister, effectively got rid of most of the opening hours kind of restrictions, the vast majority of them. And so it is not legal barriers that are stopping that taking place, it is commercial barriers that are stopping that taking place. And I would more than happily engage with any retailers to see what else can we do. I mean, this is one of the things an events programme in St Helier is so important for, and because that brings people to town out of hours. None of this is easy, but I couldn't agree more that when you visit St Malo, when you visit Dinard and Dinan particularly, you see these small towns, but they're open, not all year round, but they're open certainly throughout the summer to a great extent. But there are vast discrepancies in the numbers. 3 million visitors visited St Malo, I believe, roughly last year or the year before. Jersey is kind of 700,000 visitors. Thanks.
Supplemental question, Deputy? Deputy Ozouf.
I think given time, so I won't.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I accept that the Minister's previously stated some of the interventions to turn the visitor economy around. But given what he's just said about the change to the customer and cost-based base, what is it that he and his team believe they need to do differently to improve matters?
So I don't believe it's something that government needs to do differently. I think it's something that government working with the industry needs to just consistently be very honest and open with each other. And I think we need to understand that government cannot run a business and government cannot run an industry. What government can only do is enable those businesses to have the best platform upon which to thrive commercially. That's what I'll continue to do. I mentioned the licensing law, that is part of it. The events legislation that we're working through at the moment is exactly designed to do the same sort of thing. It is about enabling businesses to thrive. It is not about kind of government doing it, because government cannot run and should not run businesses.
There's the possibility of maybe one question and one answer. So we come to question one that Deputy Ward will ask of the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to reports in February 2025 that 4 pesticides used in Jersey contain PFAS, will the Minister advise what steps, if any, have been taken to remove these pesticides from use, and if such steps have been taken, when it can be expected that the use of these pesticides will cease?
Thank you, sir. Extensive international research is underway to better understand the risks associated with the hundreds of PFAS-containing products used in daily life. And pesticides containing PFAS are just one example. Pesticide use on the island adheres to EU and UK approvals. These jurisdictions possess the necessary expertise and analytical capacity to assess how specific PFAS compounds used in pesticides break down into metabolites, how they interact with plants and soil, how their crops absorb them, and ultimately how they might affect human health. I will continue to follow the guidance from the EU and the UK, and if they decide to ban specific pesticides, I will support implementing an equivalent ban in Jersey. In practice, this occurs automatically, as before any pesticide can be used, sold or supplied, it must be authorised for use. And in the UK, these authorisations are granted by the Chemical Regulations Directorate.
You went over the time by 8 seconds, Minister, but I think we can forgive you.
My apologies, sir.
We come now to questions without notice. The first Minister is the Minister for Health and Social Services, Connétable St Martin.
So before we start, could I just ask a question of the Chair?
Yes, of course.
The intention is that this questions without notice will take us to 5:30. Is there our intention to continue with the two or the two statements after that?
Well, it's entirely a matter for the Assembly, of course. I've given permission for a personal statement to be made by Deputy Ozouf as the next item of business after questions. And then there is a question from you as Minister, a statement from you as Minister, which will of course attach to it the possibility of some questions to follow on from that. If we do get through that today, then that will enable the Assembly to have a flying start tomorrow with public business, but that's a matter for the Assembly ultimately, and we probably need to decide that when we finish the question periods. Very well. Yes, Connétable St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in recent weeks, the Minister has spoken very openly about the need for a substantial increase in health funding. Could the Minister please explain to members why he thinks such large increases are required and where he thinks this funding should come from? Thank you.
Yes, Minister.
So it's quite correct. I think it's commonly known that I've made it plain that the health service requires a lot more money, and that takes some explanation. Just by way of background, in the forthcoming budget, we'll be looking for about 8 million a year going forward on digital and 4 on preventative health, and an increase in the base budget for health. So I think what nobody's taken into account, or certainly not made a public statement about, is the fact that health is quite an unusual area insofar as it has to deliver what it delivered last year, and in the following year it has to deliver whatever medical science throws at it in addition. If we look back over the past 60 plus years, life expectancy has improved and increased from about 71 to 83 years, something roughly in that order, 12 years of extra life. And it's in those 12 extra years so that people's money gets spent. We're still paying 20% tax, criticising the health service for overspending when we should actually be referring to it in terms of underspending. When we come to our digital efficiency, we've been rated on an international scale of 1 to 7, and we've scored at 0. So when I see appointments being missed, appointments not going out in the right way, patients falling in between the gaps between the services, it doesn't entirely surprise me. We haven't got an operating system that's collective, that allows people, the human element, to come together, and that's going to be addressed in the next sitting when we look at the partnership board. So there's a great deal of work to be done, and a lot more money is going to be required. In terms of where that comes from, we need the money immediately. So I'll be looking for that money to come from existing funds. But then I think we have to have a serious conversation with the public about the situation that we confront. And I think we're going to have to ask the public to pay and contribute more money, because you simply can't do that from where we are at the present. And I think if people want to carry on having
extended... I think we have to bring that answer to
Sorry, I was just trying to provide a comprehensive response.
And so, but that's 30 seconds over the usual 1 minute, 30 seconds that we allow for that. Supplemental question, Connétable.
No, that's quite a lot to process, so no, thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. And taking on board that the Minister is asking for more money, could he clarify whether that money will essentially go to fund the same system that we have now? In other words, a system where it's free for people going to the hospital, elective surgery and so on. Or has he at any point considered other models, such as insurance models or so on? In other words, are we simply spending more on the same system, or are we considering new systems?
Minister.
Well, we will be spending more with the system that we've got, and the system that we've got will expand and improve. In terms of the funding, I think we've got to be prepared to look at anything and everything. That might be a range of charges for certain items. It might be an insurance system. We're certainly trying to encourage more use of private insurance, but I think we've got to look everywhere. And some of it will be we'll put in charges to drive behavioural change in some areas to improve efficiency, and certain areas might include raising funds. So it's a complicated area, and it certainly won't be sorted out between now and Christmas. It's an ongoing effort, which is going to be very comprehensive. So.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir, thank you. Will there be a health strategy to explain where the money is being spent to, what the ambitions are, and how we might judge whether those ambitions are being successfully met?
So I'm always very interested when people talk about health strategy. I believe we've got a very active health strategy taking place at the moment. At some point in time, when time allows, I'm going to articulate that properly and make that plain publicly. There's a lot of reorganisational stuff going on. In terms of the finer points of health strategy, I think that'll come when we've got our house in order. It's a bit like going on a journey and planning the journey before, a journey by car, and not making sure that your car's in order before you start the process. So that's the approach that we're going to be taking, sir.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. When the Minister is looking at reforming the health service, will he take an approach that bears in mind health inequalities, which are already quite entrenched in Jersey, and to ensure that any reform of the system doesn't further worsen those health inequalities?
Well, we certainly won't be looking to worsen health inequalities, and I'm very happy to say that we'll be doing all that we can to improve those inequalities. It's all part and parcel of the mix. Thank you.
Any other questions for this Minister?
Could the Minister give an example of concrete actions that he's going to take to do that?
No, I'm afraid I can't give any concrete examples, but you can rest assured that that is one of the many things that's on the agenda, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister set out what he believes are his the three achievements that he's most proud of during his term of office so far as Minister?
So I don't like to talk about issues of pride. I've been given a job to do. I think in successive statements that I've made, it's very clear of the things that I'm doing. I think critically improving the funding, being clear about what that funding is going to be used for. And I think the plans for the Partnership Board hopefully are going to make sense to members of the Assembly. So I'm just happy to talk about the work that I'm doing, and I'm certainly not interested in using the word pride in any way. So.
Supplemental.
Yes, sir. And what are the three main things that are still on the Minister's to-do list as his top priorities for the rest of his term?
So I think I've probably just mentioned them. Improve the funding, get the Partnership Board through, and just carry on with the number of numerous things that we've been doing. When we talk about the Partnership Board, I'll be giving a full explanation of the other elements that we brought into play to make sure that we've got a more consolidated and cohesive health service.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister give an update on the new hospital? Where is it at in the process, and when will it start? When will we start to see it being put up?
Yes, negotiations are taking place between the final companies that are vying for the project, sir. I'm hoping that a contract will be signed before Christmas. It may just be that it might be just after Christmas. That's a little bit later than we'd anticipated, and that's simply because the construction industry is a tricky one at the moment, sir, and we're having to be very, very careful about what we do and how we do it in terms of making sure we've got the right partner going forward. But I'm very close to the process. I'm very happy with the way it's going, and I think we've got some very, very good people in the team, on the team running that project, sir.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, the Minister, for providing that information. And maybe a follow-up would be, would we see before the next elections some movement up at Overdale and actually some spades in the ground?
So I think it's fairly certain that the main contractors will be at work before the next election, but I think it's also important to make it clear that work continues on that site all the time. The Jersey New Waterworks premises are being refurbished now, ready for the team to take up residence there while the project's going on, and that's going to be used as an FM hub thereafter. Mains electricity, drainage and site hoardings are all being put in place with local contractors. In the past scheme, that would have been given to the overall contractor, and they'd have taken a margin on it. And our team have very cleverly made sure that they've put out to local business everything that they possibly can to keep that spend in the island. So work will continue between now and the main contractor arriving on site.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. The Minister just mentioned that he was looking for a £12 million increase in his budget in the forthcoming Ireland budget. Does he believe that there will be similar reductions from other departments to cover that?
No, I don't, sir. I've made it plain that I think this money should be in addition to anything else. I don't think other budgets need to suffer on account of this. As I've said, the money is required immediately. If we start waiting till we've done any sort of tax raising or charge raising exercises, we're going to simply be too late. And at the rate at which health costs are increasing, I think it could cause our overall budget serious damage if we don't start addressing the many problems that have been ongoing for a considerable amount of time. So no, sir, I wouldn't be looking to for other areas to make cuts to make this money available. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. So does the Minister envisage that there may have to be tax rises to cover the extra costs moving into the future? Thank you, sir.
Well, as I've said, sir, nothing's predetermined. I don't know whether we talk in terms of tax rises or certain charges for certain procedures. So that's the work that's just being started at the moment, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Listening to the Minister's answer to my earlier question, it seemed to me that he was talking about a health strategy being developed in his head. And I wonder whether he would commit to whether or not there is going to be a health strategy published. To develop his analogy, as well as he's getting the car ready for the journey, it's also good to know the destination and the route, and a health strategy might clarify that.
Perhaps I can make it a little bit clearer, sir. I'm bringing a proposal for the establishment of a partnership board, sir. If the Assembly are minded to pass that, we'll move very, very quickly to establish that, and it'll be the job of that partnership board then to do the more detailed work of putting a health strategy together. I'm very happy about the overall structural strategy that we're working at the moment, and I'm happy to elaborate when I describe the partnership board and why we need that. I'm certainly happy in the introduction to give more background of the overall picture, which, as I say, it might be in my head, but I've made all of my thoughts very, very public certainly over the last 6 months. So.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. Just to clarify that the Minister is subcontracting the health strategy to the partnership board, should it be established?
So I don't think it's necessarily a case of subcontracting. There'll be a partnership board that brings all the threads together. It'll give GPs, the sort of private businesses delivering care, the charities and HCJ an equal voice. And I think that's the forum in which these things are better discussed. It provides, it's a proper operating forum that brings all the threads together. And I think it's a more coherent approach to putting strategies together, sir.
Are there any other questions for this Minister? Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering if the Minister could update on the delivery of the dementia strategy and if he will be putting further funding towards that in the next budget.
So I haven't got an up-to-the-minute report on where we are with that, but the £4 million that I'll be asking for preventative work, I'm fairly certain that some of that money might be available to dementia, because there are a number of areas that we need to tackle. I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's an 8% year-on-year increase in people reaching retirement age, and that's going to place a very, very heavy burden on the service. So dementia will be taken extremely seriously ongoing. So.
Supplemental question? Any other questions for this Minister? Connie Arbison, Clement.
So it seems to me that we're following a chicken and egg strategy. And I would implore on the Health Minister to follow the principle that you cannot build a hospital without a health strategy. That comes first. You wouldn't know how big your hospital should be, what services the hospital should provide, what staffing ratios they supply, and what medical backup you need, and staffing. And without that, you shouldn't be building your hospital.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
It's a statement. Do you agree?
I can simply say no, of I don't agree with that at all, sir, for lots of reasons. Timing, not least of which is timing. The new hospital strategy started three years ago, nearly. We're well underway. There's been an enormous amount of collaboration between the team and everybody that works in the health services. They've got a very, very clear view of what's required to meet the needs going forward. That's involved virtually everybody. There have been hundreds of consultations, so I don't accept that contention at all, and I don't think it does justice to the considerable amount of work that's taken place. So.
Very well, that brings the time available for questions to this Minister to an end. The next Minister is the Minister for Housing and Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. What actions will the Minister take before the end of his term to help under 25-year-olds access affordable housing and to tackle the bean drain, an issue this government has already recognised as serious concern and one driven by the lack of affordable housing for young people?
Thanks, sir. Thank the Deputy for her question. I've been clear that it's my ambition that at some point I'd like us to get to a point where we can lower the age for social housing eligibility below 25. But I've been clear that that will be done in an evidence-based way, making sure that we are matching capacity with interest. So I'm not I'm not setting an arbitrary deadline for that, because if we got to that deadline and turns out that capacity wasn't going to match interest there, then that wouldn't be to anyone's benefit. So it's something that I'm keeping a watchful eye over, and something which I'm in regular conversations with Andy M. Holmes about, testing with them what interest they get when a new development comes online, and what types of applicants come forward, if there's less or more demand than they anticipated from it, and it will be through that I decide when is the moment to lower the age. But it is my desire for it to go beneath 25. I'm probably running out of time, sir, but she'd also mentioned about the bean drain. I don't think that social housing eligibility is the only element to that. First-time buyer support is obviously a huge part of that as well, and that's why I'm wholesale behind the ambitions in the Investing in Jersey plan, which I think will go some way to making that something that more young people feel is an aspiration that they can meet in Jersey.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Minister for his answer. And of course, he mentioned the first-time buyer scheme, but of course, maybe under 25-year-olds don't necessarily want to make that commitment yet. So what other schemes or actions could the Minister do to support affordable housing for under 25-year-olds if it's not through Andy and it's if they are not wanting to take that commitment to get a mortgage and build debt just yet?
Well, so I do think that it's important that we encourage people into home ownership as young as they can manage, because that means that they're spending more of their younger working years paying into an asset for themselves, paying their own mortgage. And if we're able to encourage that younger, then that's a good thing. And it also means those young people will have a clear commitment to Jersey and are less likely to be actively thinking about moving when they are tied to the island with that asset. But of course, for those for whom that's not an interest to them or something they want to pursue right away, I think that it would be very helpful to encourage young people to be able to live independently in their early 20s, not having to stay with their parents beyond those years, which is something that for many reasons won't be desirable to people at that age. But if they know that their option is going to be to move into a private rental sector where there's insecurity of tenure and no protection against excessive rent increases, then I would not blame any young person for not finding that particularly appealing, especially when they would compare that to other jurisdictions that in the near future, England, for example, making huge progress on that now, and other jurisdictions being much further along than we are, which is why I've proposed a residential tenancy law that I think will in particular help young people looking to rent in the private sector.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister supportive of P61, and if not, why?
Oh, this is embarrassing. Could the Deputy remind me which one P61 is? I'm not good with P numbers.
Pre-sale
usually.
agreements.
Sorry. Pre-sale agreements. Deputy Andrews and I spoke about this recently. I think that the proposition in its current form won't go as far as I think the Deputy's ambition is to have a better environment better framework for how people buy their homes to give them protection from gazumping. So I'm keen to engage with Deputy Andrews about what we might be able to do, perhaps to tweak that in some ways to make it, make it stand a better chance of actually providing protection to those people. And Deputy Andrews, when I met to speak to him, had indicated that he was happy to have that conversation. So I'm looking forward to getting a date in the diary and sitting down over a coffee with him and seeing if we can work something that gives us all confidence can be a good way forward on that.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, sir. What elements of concern does the Minister have at the moment, and how would he go about correcting those concerns?
So even with pre-sale agreements in the form that Deputy Andrews is proposing, there would still potentially be circumstances where people could end up in a situation where they think they're about to go ahead with transacting on a house and then have their heart broken because something has come up that isn't actually necessarily anyone's fault or isn't out of kind of malicious attempt to extort more money from that person, that there are things that can come up at the last minute that that would not be covered by that. And of course, there's the strange part of our rules, which is physically having to go to a court and buy your home through that way, which is not a system that lots of other jurisdictions do. So I think that if we sit down together and think about this, perhaps there's something a bit more all-encompassing we could look at that might be able to close off some of those loopholes and meet the ambition that Deputy Andrews is raising, which is a genuine and sincere one to stop people from going through that horrible moment that we have had testimony has happened under our system, under the current rules in recent years.
Thank you, sir. As my second oral question didn't make it due to time, and it's for housing, I'll ask it now. So further to the presentation of the scrutiny report on the draft residential tenancy amended law, in which it is stated that there is significant misinformation and confusion around the law and the proposed amendments, will the Minister detail what steps, if any, he is taking to address and counter this misinformation?
Thanks, sir. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a great sense of vindication when I read that line in the scrutiny report, because it most definitely is the case that in much of the dialogue about the proposed residential tenancy law, that there is a large proliferation of misinformation as to what the law will actually require of people in our society. So the soft approach to that is to do some of the things that I've already done, which is provide Q&A documents that I hope is reassuring to both landlords and tenants. And if the law is adopted, obviously I'll have more to do on that. I'm producing more firm guidance that I want to be as easily accessible and understandable as possible. But so the harder approach on that, sir, is to be unapologetic in countering misinformation when it is spread by some. So when people want to disparage the proposed law and say things like, oh, this just increases red tape, I will look that member in the eye and say, go on, tell me what red tape, and I'll enjoy the flustering that they do afterwards, because there is no extra red tape proposed in that law. When a member stands up and talks about state oversight being introduced by the law, we will be unapologetic in saying that is untrue. There is no extra state oversight proposed in that law. We stand firm against misinformation because it's something that, when it is proliferated in politics, denigrates us all.
Supplemental question, Deputy Kovac.
Yes, please. Building on that, will the Minister set out the measures proposed in the draft residential tenancy amendment law to mitigate any potential unintended consequences, particularly in the view of the misinformation identified?
Well, indeed, and we'll begin that debate possibly tomorrow, sir, and there will be a degree of my proposition speech in that, where I will tackle some of that misinformation and aim to do that. We also have our government communication channels, which I intend to use as well, to make sure that that as many of the myths around this can be countered. And I'm confident, sir, that if we're given permission to go ahead with that, then people will eventually come to realise, sir, that the law that's proposed is balanced and proportionate, does not lead to any extra impositions on anyone who's currently doing the right thing in that part of our market, but will exclusively negatively impact those who are undertaking behaviours that nobody would want to defend.
Deputy Reynolds.
Yes, so speaking about the supply of family homes and the island plan rezoned sites specifically for that purpose, affordable family homes, does the Minister believe that if the sites that were rezoned in the Bridging Island plan are not brought forward for development, they should be compulsorily purchased as allowed for in the Bridging Island plan so that they can be?
Well, sir, given that I voted in favour of the Bridging Island plan, it would be hypocritical for me to say that that shouldn't be an option. Obviously, sir, it should be a last option and wouldn't be something that you would want to go through the process of doing if it was at all avoidable. But there is a reason why that backstop is in the Bridging Island plan. I supported it being there, and as a very, very last resort, I wouldn't have any kind of in principle opposition to it. But hopefully it's not something we need to consider.
Supplementary question?
Yes, sir. Is the Minister engaging at all with landowners, developers or any other stakeholders to ensure that that measure isn't required and encourage those sites to be brought forward without that backstop?
So I've had a lot of engagement in the last year and a half with various developers and those seeking to bring these sites online and build what was always intended to be built on them. And I've worked with them to make sure that what they propose fits in with that vision and that they stand the best chances of success in being able to deliver on it. Because the deputies asked me that question, though, I should probably go back and double check all of those sites to see that if there are any that haven't come up in any of that dialogue so far, and if there aren't any, then I should probably look at that.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Environment Minister earlier touched on a growing challenge that is facing owners of properties with first-time buyer restrictions from previous approvals when they were built, as demand has been exceeding supply. Will the Minister advise whether he and his department have reviewed the stock of housing, the cumulative stock created of housing which has these purchase restrictions, and whether we need to review how occupancy restrictions work to best serve the home owning market?
So I don't know if that review of the stock in the way the Deputy is asking has taken place, but it is the case so that the broader policies on who can access those kind of homes with restrictions on is something that we're actively considering. There is a line in the Investing in Jersey plan that highlights that especially as something that we are going to need to look at reviewing those policies. I did last year change some of that to make it easier for people who had already bought a home to regain their first-time buyer status for the purposes of upsizing, and that enables them to access some of the schemes like Andean Home Buy, for example, or other restricted homes that they hadn't beforehand been able to access as easily. But the testimonies that I'm receiving now from people who are struggling with upsizing suggest to me that there's probably more we ought to be looking at doing in that, but that is on our agenda and it is referenced in the Investing in Jersey plan.
Supplemental question? Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister intend to extend the First Step scheme? And if it is extended, where will he get the funding from? Thank you, sir.
So there won't be an extension of it for this upcoming budget. Initially, we had £10 million earmarked for it, and we were able to extend that to another £2 million at the last one. I'm very pleased with how it's gone so far. I think it has been a great success, but my intention now is to take a little bit of time to reflect on it, see if there's any tweaking that could be done. There were people who appealed through it because they weren't eligible, so I want to think about did any of those people have a point, and could a future tranche or iteration of it accommodate those kinds of people more easily? But we will need to take some time to do that, and obviously it won't be in the gift of this Assembly and this government because of the election next year. But if I have anything to say about it, I will want to push for more funding for the budget afterwards, when we'll have done that piece of work to be able to see if any tweaks to First Step need to be made. But I think it's already demonstrated that it's a very good system, it works, and it would be relatively easy to restart it again at some point in the future if we needed to.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide the current number of islanders who are in Band 1 of on the affordable housing gateway? Band 1, as a reminder, it's most of them are emergency accommodation like homelessness, staying in hostel, shelter, tied in accommodation linked to the employment, etc. So what are the numbers and when the Minister expected they will receive a kind of accommodation?
And this is where I'm going to fumble through my paperwork, sir, but I do have that figure somewhere, and I am trying to buy time to find it, sir, and obviously I'm going to fail to do so, but I will endeavour to get that figure to the Deputy as soon as possible.
Well, if you delay it a little bit more, we'll be out of time anyway, Minister. So, yes. Well, I'll give you a supplementary. The Minister's undertaken to answer. I'll give you a supplementary.
So it will not be time, I understand. Thank you.
Very much. Very well. Well, that does bring to an end the time available for questions to this Minister. We therefore come on for questions to the Chief Minister, and we have Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. That was very quick. In his answer to my PFAS question, the Environment Minister said that he would be following international guidance. I'd like to bring to the attention of the Chief Minister a recent court case in Italy where a company was found guilty of contaminating water in the Veneto region. 11 executives were jailed. The judge commented that executives were not simply negligent, they deliberately prioritised profits over health. What reassurance can the Minister give to Jersey residents the application of any chemicals currently used by the farming community are PFAS-free?
I don't have the expertise to answer that question without referring back to the officials. So I would refer to the work that's being led by Deputy Lewis and Deputy Binet on PFAS and remind the Deputy and the Assembly the Government has published its response to the third report from the independent PFAS scientific panel to reassure islanders and has agreed the recommendations providing intervention and treatments. So we're making good progress with that, having accepted the challenges that lie ahead and now dealing with the best way to deal with them. The technical aspect of assuring which chemicals, farming chemicals, don't contain PFAS, I would have to seek expert advice, and I'm happy to do that. Perhaps the Deputy could either put that in a written question, so we can provide a public answer.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. Does the Chief Minister not believe that rather than waiting for slow-moving EU regulatory processes, an island the size of Jersey should in fact be on the front foot and implementing our own precautionary restrictions on PFAS use ahead of external regulatory frameworks?
So I would argue that we are on the front foot and remind members we are leading the way in almost every other jurisdiction with the work that's being done. And yes, I do believe that we should stay on the front foot. We should be, rather than fast followers, we have the opportunity to be leaders in our small island, and I have full confidence in the work that's being carried out. So I'm agreeing with the Deputy and also reminding members that whilst this work is challenging and concerning for islanders, we're moving forward with it.
David Renouf.
Thank you, sir. On August the 21st, after it was announced that the fast ferry service to the UK would be suspended for the winter, the Chief Minister said that, quote, the level of service delivered to date, particularly the decision to withdraw the UK fast ferry over winter, falls short of what was promised. The day after, the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development confirmed that that was actually not something that was in the contract. So can he say in what way the FTS service fell short of what was promised?
Well, sir, I think, first of all, I want to take the opportunity to say that I've been working closely with the Minister for Economic Development in meeting with the FDS and holding them to account. In fact, we have a meeting with them in Jersey after the Assembly this evening. In relation to the fast ferry, sir, and the contract to which it applies, there are two aspects of that contract which involve comments I made. First one is that the contract says that they are obliged to provide fast ferry services during the summer months. But in the contract, the FDS also proposed, and the tables are in there, that they would continue to provide a fast ferry service throughout the winter months. And they provided some schedules to that, sir. Of course, there is a commitment by DFDS to invest £300 million in a new fleet in forthcoming years, over the next, I'm not sure, I think it's 6 years, might be 8, so that's a far greater investment that we've ever seen in the ferry. So there has to be a certain amount of commercial latitude in the contract, sir. But we had a positive meeting with DFDS, and we're meeting with them again today, sir, to work closely with them to ensure islanders get the best service possible, sir, within the realms of commercial reality.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, I'm confused by that because the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development said on the 22nd of August that there were no guarantees within the contract about use of fast ferry services in the winter. I wonder if we could have some clarity from the government about this, please.
Well, sir, just as I've just said it, sir, I think there is an interpretation to be had in the contract from what I've just explained. The DFDS did propose they would operate some fast ferry services in the winter. Now, at the moment, they're planning to take one fast ferry out and keep one fast ferry in, sir, and I'm optimistic that we can find some schedules using one fast ferry between St Malo and the northern route, sir, and those are the discussions we're having now.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Can the Chief Minister advise what oversight he has of the economic conditions affecting the island at the moment? And what actually is he doing to improve the cost of living position that's affecting so many islanders at this time?
As I've said on numerous occasions in the Assembly, as many members will know, we have limited levers we can pull to impact upon our own cost of living because the majority of it is dictated by circumstances outside of the island. But this government, we refer to the CSP in relation to the reduction of GP fees, providing extended nursery care. There's some more financial support measures coming up in the existing budget, promoting competition. Deputy Morel chairs the cost of living support group, and I refer members to the report of that was published in 23 or 22 rather, in relation to keeping states' charges as low as possible, and we've limited those to 2.5% increases. So we're doing whatever we can to bear down on the cost of living, but it is difficult because we have limited options, and I know it's a topic that's high on the agenda of the Economic Development Minister, but it is extremely challenging, so given most of the challenges are coming from outside of the island.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can we be confident that there will be some consideration given to fiscal stimulus within the forthcoming budget? And on that, can the Chief Minister explain why the budget is delayed? And we haven't seen it yet.
Well, so yes, I can reassure members that we are bringing forward, as part of the budget, some measures that will help islanders with costs. Primarily, I'm talking about extended nursery care. As an example, the budget is not delayed as such. When I wrote to scrutiny back in May, we were aiming for lodging at the 2nd of September. I think when we looked at states business and the timing of the assisted dying debate, and also the challenges we've had with the budget. It's been a long, lengthy discussion, detailed discussion about how we allocate, reprioritise spending in the budget. It was agreed that the most sensible solution was to lodge on the 15th of September for debate in December. So I hope that's acceptable to all members, sir. And I promise them not a dull and boring pre-election budget, but an interesting budget, I think, that's in the best interest of the island.
Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister alluded to this in a previous answer, but could the Chief Minister update the Assembly on the current status and timeline for the proposed public ombudsman?
Not at the moment, sir, because Deputy Moz is in the process of completing her work. So I'm looking at her now, but I'm sure she will update me afterwards, and I can let the Deputy know. But I know work has progressed, and I hope that's something we can take to the Council of Ministers in fairly short order.
A supplemental question, Deputy Chair?
Yes, sir. In the absence of an ombudsman, how are islands currently meant to have confidence that their complaints against public bodies are handled fairly and independently?
Well, sir, I think that's probably at the heart of why this Assembly agreed to establish an ombudsperson some time ago. We've run our various complaint system. The one we're running with at the now, I think it's fair to say, it needs review for more modern society and community. And I think that's why we're likely to be recommending to Council of Ministers we move ahead with the previous state's decision. That, of course, is subject to debate on the detail, but then I think we'll be in a position to have a consistent long-term approach to handling complaints, right, both inside and within government organisations and by government to government-owned organisations as well, sir.
Deputy Taddy.
The Chief Minister has mentioned the FDS, that he's meeting with them this evening. Can the Chief Minister confirm that he's aware that our scrutiny panel has asked for the contract, the concession agreement, to be put in the public domain? Is that something that the Chief Minister, from a governmental point of view, can commit to doing, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. It is something that both the Economic Development Minister and I agree with the principle of. Of course, it's different to the operating agreement. It's now 150 page with, I think, 9 schedules of detailed contractual terms that relate to a business arrangement with a multinational company. So there is a lot more sort of commercially sensitive aspects of the contract. The contract has been provided to scrutiny in its entirety, sir, and I think an Economic Development Minister is considering how best to publish the detail without compromising the confidentiality, sir. But I'd like to say we are committed to better transparency on this, and the Deputy will keep the Chair of Scrutiny informed. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Taddy.
Yeah, I wonder whether the Chief Minister might ask DFDS. We've written to them as a scrutiny panel, so asking them to meet with us in public, which they've declined. And I wonder if, in his meeting tonight, in the spirit of transparency, along with the concession agreement, which we're asking to be published, whether they would also agree to come and meet with us publicly, willingly.
I shall certainly ask the question, sir.
So once again, referring to the northbound ferry route, would the Chief Minister agree that given the public ultimately would like a cheap, reliable ferry service running in calm seas all the time, would he agree that a compromise would be a slower vessel but reliable running north? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That is what is proposed by DFDS, that they would increase and improve the service provided by the traditional ferry during the winter period. I would like to see some rotation of the ferry, the fast ferry on the southern and northern route. So, and that's part of the discussions we are having with them, but we can be assured of an improved and stable traditional ferry service throughout the winter, sir, providing additional sailings.
Supplemental question comes up.
Yes, so will the Chief Minister guarantee to provide calm seas throughout the winter?
Yes, sir, and sunny weather as well. Yeah.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Scott's amendment to the Residential Tenancy Law, Amendment 6, is premised on the claim that she is, quote, simplifying the Housing Minister's proposition. Does he think that it shows respect within the ministerial team that one minister rewrites a proposition for another minister? And would he recommend that ministers adopt this practice more widely, perhaps with a variety of ministers rewriting the budget to their taste?
How long have I got, sir? I think all ministers and assistant ministers have acted with courtesy, respect and professionalism when dealing with this. We've had some challenging discussions around the Council of Ministers table, and it's quite within the rights of an assistant minister to amend a proposition. Would I like a smoother government? Not necessarily, because I think when we disagree, when we have these disagreements, we have deeper and more thorough debates. And I know it's not always comfortable, but in the case of the residential tenancy law that's coming for debate tomorrow, I look forward to that debate. And actually, when the government can't agree, we're mature enough to say we agree to differ, and we turn to this assembly to make the right democratic decision, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf. 45 seconds. Any other questions? Deputy IA. You have to be quick.
Thank you, sir. I did press my light earlier, not to worry. Does the Chief Minister accept that all States members should abide by the Code of Conduct?
There are a number of different codes of conduct, but in general, yes, I do agree with that.
Supplemental question there.
Thank you, sir. Are there any aspects of the Code of Conduct that the Chief Minister believes may need amending, and will he bring forward any amendments to the Code?
I simply would need time to consider that. So I don't think anything's perfect, and we could probably make improvements. And I'm sure this topic will come up for conversation some stage during the debate tomorrow.
Well, that brings to an end the question times for the Chief Minister. Let's just make an observation from the Chair. I called to account Deputy Jeune because she said yep, but on various other occasions we've had yes or no acknowledgement of a question from the Chair at all. And that's not very parliamentary, so perhaps if members could avoid slang. If it's in response to a question from the Chair, that would be much appreciated before anger ensues. Very good. Yes, sir.
Sir, it's 5:30. May I propose the adjournment?
You can. May I just, before you propose the adjournment, simply say we move on to two matters before public business. The first matter is a statement that can be made by Deputy Ozouf. That's a personal statement, and therefore there are no questions that flow from that. Having looked at the length of it, it's 7 or 8 paragraphs. 3 of them are about 5 lines, and the rest are 2 lines and no more. Then there is the possibility of a statement from the Minister for the Environment, which of course will attract the potential for 15 minutes of questions. If the Assembly continues, then we are likely to be finished by well before 6 o'clock, but that's a matter for members. I simply give that as information so that members can decide if they want to deal with these matters as a first item of business tomorrow, or whether or not they wish to deal with them this evening. In that context, do you propose the adjournment?
I do, sir, and I think that tomorrow's business, the first item is, of course, the one that deals with the matter of PPC, which involves Deputy Ozouf, and I imagine that his statement relates to that very topic. So it would seem to be logical to have that done on the same day, rather than have a statement now, which there's no questions about. It seemed sensible to have that tomorrow, and in fact do the other statement also tomorrow, sir. We are at 5:30. We have Saturday early, and it's continuation of State's business after question time.
Then you're proposing the adjournment, Deputy. I can see that there may be room for discussion on this. So is that seconded before we have a debate on it? Yes. Very well. Chief Minister.
I'm not sure of the standing order, if I may amend the proposition, sir, and I don't want to spend more than 5 minutes. I understand Deputy Ozouf's statement will only take about 5 minutes, sir, and I propose it might give us something to reflect upon overnight before tomorrow's important date, and I propose we allow him to make it.
Deputy Balash?
Well, so I'm afraid I didn't quite hear what the Chief Minister said, but I was going to ask you for a ruling in essence on a point of order, because it does seem to me that where a member wishes to make a personal statement, he really ought to be given the opportunity to make that statement at the earliest opportunity. And it's a very short statement, and I think I hope you will be able to rule that it should take place this evening.
Thank you, Deputy. I don't feel able to make that ruling. I think the points you make are entirely well made, and the Assembly may agree with that. Standing orders, I believe, provide that the bailiff has to approve the content and has to indicate that it can be made but when it's made is normally when it falls conveniently within the business of the Assembly. We've reached the end of the ordinary business for the day. It may be entirely sensible to deal with a short matter at this point, but I don't think I can preempt the rights of the Assembly by giving an order to that extent. Deputy Morel.
Thank you, sir, and I'm encouraged by the foot stamping following Deputy Balash's intervention. It was just to say that, in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, I would like to put the Assembly in the hands of Deputy Ozouf on this matter. And if he should like to make the statement tonight, then I feel that that is for him to decide rather than the rest of us, sir.
Well, we have a proposition. Are you prepared to withdraw that in favour of the possibility of dealing with Deputy Ozouf alone?
No, sir, I'd like to sum up when everyone's spoken and maintain the proposition.
Very well.
I did try to amend. Is that possible?
Yes, I don't think we can amend on the hoof in that way. I think the correct thing is if members don't want to adjourn immediately and want to deal with some other matter, either one or both of them, then we vote on Deputy Taddier's proposition, and then and then someone else makes another proposition. And it may or may not pass. So, Deputy Rob Ward.
So I just want to say to the Assembly, on a number of occasions, people with families have said that they do have children, and last-minute extensions to the day are not a positive thing to do, and we've adjourned, but we seem to be not doing that today. I think if this was going to happen, it should have been dealt with earlier in the day, so those with families who have to look after them could have made arrangements, but we aren't doing that. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Scott.
Notwithstanding that I find this whole thing very kind of uncomfortable, I just sort of wondered, I agree with Deputy Morel. I know that the Deputy Ozouf can't speak, but a little thumbs up or thumbs down would really useful. Thanks.
Does any other member wish to speak on this? The issue is whether or not we adjourn immediately. If we vote in favour of that, and Deputy Taddier will have the chance to respond. If we vote in favour of that, then the Assembly will stand adjourned and the rest of the business will continue tomorrow. If we vote against, then it will be for the Assembly to determine whether we deal with one or both matters of outstanding business. No other members? Deputy Taddier.
So I don't know if I'm missing something. We made a decision to meet early on a Monday. We would normally be here on a Tuesday at 9:30. We'd normally have question time, then we would move on to a period of statements if there are any, and then we would move on to the rest of public business. We made a decision to sit today, exceptionally, to do question time. We didn't say we were coming back here to do question time and any other statements. So members knew that. There are members who are not in the Assembly today who have been excused because today was not a scheduled sitting day. Deputy Ozouf's statement, I suspect, that he will make, a personal statement, is directly related to the no doubt long debate that we will have tomorrow on the issue in hand, which is to do with the suspension of a member, which is very serious and which needs detailed consideration. And I would suggest we don't start that this evening, especially when we weren't anticipating starting it, especially when we don't have the full number of members who might be here to hear that statement. I also notice I don't have a copy of that statement that's being made. I don't have my laptop with me today either, and I don't have access to my email, so I won't be able to read along with what Deputy Ozouf might wish to say. But I do note that he made a personal statement at the recent sitting, and that he will also have two opportunities to speak tomorrow during the debate at the beginning and at the end of the debate. So we're essentially talking about a third speech here, and I think it would be entirely appropriate for that speech to be made in the wider context of the debate, which we will then virtually immediately start after the speech. I think that's the reason I'm proposing the adjournment. As standing order says, the adjournment should be posed at 5:30. I might be missing something. I don't know what the wider politics are here, but I don't see why we wouldn't adjourn and come back tomorrow and do this in the right order, and also hear the statement that is to be made from the Minister for Environment, which will, of course, include questions. So I maintain the proposition that we adjourn now, sir.
Very well. Those in favour of adjourning, kindly it is called for. Invite any members who are out from the chamber to return to their seats. The vote is on do we adjourn now or continue to deal with other business yet to be determined. Very well. If members have returned to the seat, I ask the greffier to open the voting. A vote pour is to adjourn immediately. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Proposition is defeated. 11 votes pour, 32 votes contre, 3 abstentions.
I ask for the 11, please, sir.
Those voting pour, the Connétables of Grouville and St. Juan, Deputies Southern, Tadier, Hegera, Ayer, Ward, Alves, Horay, Renouf, and Deputy Coles online.
Well, the next logical thing is to permit Deputy Ozouf to make his statement, because that is the next order of business, and if we're not adjourning, we must be doing something, but then it falls to be decided as to whether the Minister makes his statement at the end of that.
So could I ask for a point of process that could we have a copy of the statement, please?
Yes, the Gref was waiting before circulating until the Gref knew that the Deputy was to make his statement. Now that's known, that will be circulated forthwith.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
If I could be of assistance, and in order to circulate my statement at the correct time, can we agree now that I would not make my statement until tomorrow morning? Would members agree that?
Can I just take a general mood of yes? Oh, yes, well, I think if someone proposes the adjournment after Deputy Ozouf has spoken, then there's going to be nimcom.
I'm grateful, sir.
Very well.
So just to say, I don't have the statement, I don't have access to emails, and I'm waiting for a paper statement.
Well, it has been circulated to members electronically in the usual way, Deputy, but if it assists, you can have my paper copy. Well, you have to pass it round. I have mine electronically, but we don't have an usher.
So I believe the usher may have gone to print out some copies.
Well, there we are. We can. Could you hand that to Deputy Tadier, please?
Thank you, sir. It's kind.
That's right. Deputy Ozouf.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for taking the Assembly's time, but I'm grateful. Sir, last November, I drove at 31 miles an hour in a 15-mile-an-hour green lane. Although I was insured, I had not displayed the valid insurance certificate in my car. Following interactions with the state's police, this was corrected, and I wrongly assumed that this matter was closed. Highly respectful of the parish system, of course I would have wished to have the non-attendance at the parish hall inquiries would not have occurred. However, because of the speeding issue, I was referred to the Magistrates' Court, where I admitted the offence, gave a fulsome apology, and paid the fine immediately. Following media reports of my attendance at the Magistrates' Court, the Commission of Standards received 4 complaints from members of the public. The Commission decided to commence an investigation and concluded my conduct fell short of the code. I accepted that finding and I apologised before PPC. I wish to offer a full and unreserved apology today to this Assembly, to my constituents, to the Honorary Police of St Helier, whose service I said I would deeply respect. This experience has been profoundly humbling and distressing. I have felt genuine embarrassment and regret for letting down those I serve and for falling short of the standards expected of me. In the last 2 years, I have faced a number of personal traumas, including, most importantly, the death of my husband. The effect has been to turn my life upside down and, to a great extent, affected my ability to single-handedly address the volume of issues that arise in such circumstances in the ways that I would have wished. Members of this Assembly are aware that during this period, I was also advised to seek expert professional advice for my health. As a result, it was established and then later confirmed that I was living with ADHD. This diagnosis would never have been made otherwise. But this clarity has given me the tools to make the necessary adjustments. It has helped me to gain a deeper understanding and insight into both the challenges and strengths. But that is not an excuse. However, it offers an explanation as to why I have found certain issues so challenging. including my interaction with the Commission of Standards, whose office I have the utmost respect for. I'm adjusting to the way of life as it is now, for me. I continue to put in place structures and arrangements that will assist me for a better future. And I thank members for their continued understanding and support. Thank you, sir.
Proposing adjournment, please.
The adjournment is proposed. The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.